What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories.
2 hectoseconds. Chapter 26 Male Soup. Female Soup. But, damn it, Mr. Aruka's attack is so heavy, it's really right to call this guy a violent teacher. Naruto was in a miserable state at this time. His whole body was muddy, his face was bruised and swollen. The goggles were directly blown out, and even 2 teeth were lost. Aruka has been away for a while, and his body is full. She was still trembling now, even a little reluctant to stand up. Naruto, are you okay? Hinata looked at Naruto worriedly, but Shikamaru and Choji, 2 damaging friends on the side, looked like a survivor. Aruka just gave Naruto a severe lesson and ignored them. Naruto waved his hand, motioned to himself that it was okay, and then suddenly said. No, I can't just leave it like that. I have to show Mr. Aruka some color, otherwise he thought I was a bully. Uzumaki Naruto. Hello, Naruto, are you okay? That's Mr. Aruka. Shikamaru looked at Naruto with an incredible face, knowing that the name of the teacher Aruka's violence has long been known to everyone in the entire grade. Anyone who offends His Majesty will be taught miserably. Naruto is the best example. It seems that only Naruto is an example. Anyway, whenever there is any dissatisfaction with Aruka, no one dares to speak out when he thinks of Naruto's tragic situation. Now Naruto actually wants to teach Aruka a lesson. This is simply an international joke. Shikamaru, you are really unambitious, you have been taught so many times that you dare not fight back. Please, this is cautious. If you know what you can't do, just give up. You are the one who has been taught so many times. Why don't I remember that I was taught by Mr. Aruka? Shikamaru is right, the trouble with Mr. Aruka is really irrational. Naruto, you should give up. Choji persuaded while eating snacks. Naruto. You are so annoying, since you are not doing it, I have to go alone, When the words were over, Naruto snorted, and then quickly ran in the direction where Aruka disappeared, not knowing that Mao's body recovered so quickly. Hinata just wanted to follow, but her little hand was suddenly caught by Shikamaru. If Aruka-sensei finds out that you are playing a prank with Naruto, you won't be allowed to follow Naruto again. Hearing that, Hinata hesitated for a moment, and finally dispelled the thought of following the past, and could only watch the direction of Naruto's disappearance worriedly. Aruka, who was unaware of this, walked directly into the bathhouse after teaching Naruto. After paying the money, he did not go directly to the bathhouse. Instead, he ran to the toilet after asking for the location. After all, people have 3 urgency, even if he is. Ninjas and superpowers couldn't avoid it, but he was anxious to go to the toilet and didn't notice when he didn't know when there was a little golden head behind him. After solving the physical problem, Aruka hummed a song and walked to the door of the bathhouse. Seeing the word, male soup, written on a blue cloth in front of him, Aruka knew what it meant even without the memory of his predecessor, and immediately left without hesitation. Go in, and then. FK, what's the situation? In the changing room filled with white steam, there are not only white bathrobes on the clothes basket, but also some women's underwear in various colors. Go wrong. Aruka hurriedly backed out, opened his eyes and looked at the door curtain in front of him again. The word, male soup, was clearly written on it. After hesitating, Aruka walked in again. Did I meet a lady fetish or an underwear thieves? Aruka looked at the bamboo basket full of clothes with a puzzled face. At this moment, people were talking faintly in the bathroom. When he listened carefully, he found that most of them were men's voices, although women's voices were there. But it was very small, and then he remembered that there was only one wall between the male soup and the female soup, and that the voice of a woman was normal, and he was relieved immediately. But he neglected that the female bath is generally much quieter than the male bath. Regardless of whether it is a male bath or a female bath, the loudest voice in the bathhouse is basically the male bath. Aruka was relieved and began to take off his clothes. Although it was a bit of psychological pressure to take a bath with a lady-loving man, he didn't mind turning around and leaving. He had already made plans. When he went in, what if someone is in the bath, he will take a shower, and he will use it when there is no one in the bath. After tying a bath towel around her waist, Aruka stood in front of the bathroom with a small tub in her hands, took a deep breath, and prepared herself to face the female addiction. When she opened her eyes again, her face was full. It is the color of firmness. I will not be shaken, even if there is a demon inside, I will never be shaken. After making up his mind, Aruka decisively opened the curtain and walked in. Cheat. Deceit. Advertisement. After seeing the scene inside, Aruka's face suddenly stiffened, and his body shuddered slightly. The small wooden tub held by his arm fell to the ground with a crisp sound, which immediately attracted the attention of the person who was taking a bath inside. In the not-so-large bathroom, there are not many people taking baths and baths. There are only 3 people, 2 are taking a bath and 1 is taking a bath, and when the 3 of them see Aruka, their faces suddenly become distorted. What? There was a loud scream in the bathroom, and without exception, it was all women's voices. He is neither a brawny man with a feminine lover, nor an enchanting ladyboy, nor a normal man, but a normal woman. In other words, Aruka enters the female soup. And what makes Aruka the most unacceptable is that he knows 2 of the 3 girls. They are Uchiha Crescent Moon and Uchiha Izumi, who happened to meet before. Uchiha Izumi is better. The body is buried underwater and can only be seen clearly. When you reach the head and shoulders, you can only see the outline of the underwater part, but Uchiha Crescent Moon is miserable. She is the closest to Aruka. She turned around subconsciously when she heard the sound. She was completely naked at this moment. Aruka's state is full of Aruka's eyes. Even if she and another woman jumped into the bath with a quick reaction, it didn't make any sense. Because that picture is already engraved in Aruka's mind. Since someone you know is inside, it means that Aruka doesn't even have a chance to escape. You must know that Uchiha Crescent knows his details. Unless he escapes from Konoha, don't expect this incident to escape. Whoosh whoosh. While thinking about it, the three small barrels flew towards Aruka at the same time, which immediately made Aruka regain his senses. After avoiding an embarrassment, he hurriedly waved at the three girls who were already angry and said, "Misunderstanding. This is all a misunderstanding. Listen to my explanation. I really didn't know this was the female soup." Izumi and Schwanyu, who only showed their heads, finally recognized Aruka at this time and exclaimed in unison. "It's you." Quote quote. The other girl didn't know Aruka at all. She saw Aruka and didn't leave yet. Angrily, she didn't notice the exclamation of Schwanyu and Izumi. She stretched out a white arm from the bath and said coldly, "Go to hell and explain, Shinobi, shulker snake." When the words fell, I saw a white arm squirming suddenly, and then I saw a few brown snakes spit out letters and rushed towards Aruka. Upon seeing this, Aruka could only helplessly spin up chakra, using his power to create a small gravitational field pressed several snakes to the ground, and a few long snakes soon turned into a pool of soft mud. Hey, is it okay to be reasonable? I really didn't mean it. The door curtain of male soup is obviously hanging on the outside. How can I know that there will be? Before Aruka finished speaking, she was interrupted by the angry girl. You dare to resist. The girl with short purple black hair saw that Aruka could not be controlled by a single move. She was about to stand up and use ninjutsu, but she realized that she was still in a naked state just after she left. The innate shame of a woman immediately let her dispel this idea. Damn it, if it weren't for clothes, I would definitely be able to get rid of this pervert. Seeing that she would not plan to do anything for a while, Aruka suddenly sighed with relief, and suddenly heard the crescent moon saying in anger. I said, Mr. Aruka, teacher, when are you going to stay in the female soup? Shanyu specially emphasized the word, teacher, and the two people on the side suddenly looked towards Shanyu after hearing it. This guy is actually a teacher. You know him. Crescent Moon nodded, and then looked at Aruka maliciously, saying meaningfully, I didn't expect you to do such a thing, Mr. Aruka. Scum. Quan Mei took a sip, while the woman with short purple and black hair had a look in her eyes, and then she suddenly stretched out her tongue and licked her lips. Since you know this dead pervert, it's easy to handle. Seeing the different faces of the three, Aruka suddenly had an ominous premonition. Izumi was better, and his disgust was very obvious, and he could see it at a glance, but the eyes of the girl with short purple and black hair and Wanyu made him unpredictable. Chapter 27 The Truth. Illusion. The situation has developed to this point. In Hokage's office, third generation carried his hands on his back and looked into the distance through the windowsill. The rickety figure seemed weaker than usual, and a touch of sadness flashed through his dim old eyes, and deep helplessness in his words. Behind him are three veteran figures representing Konoha's senior leadership, and comrades in arms from the same era as him Uchiha Kaharu, Mitokado Homura, and Shimura Danzo. There is no way. The Uchiha clan has long held resentment towards the village, so the rebellion is expected. Hiruzen, this is not the time to be soft-hearted. Kaharu is right. The Uchiha clan is too strong and not satisfied with the status quo. It is the most unstable place in the village. It is the most correct way to wipe it out, otherwise the village will remain in the shadow of Uchiha. Third generation took a deep breath of the pipe, and after spit it out, it just stood quietly, silent for a long time. I have already talked about Uchiha Itachi. As long as he does it, we can eradicate the Uchiha clan without a single soldier. Of course, the necessary preparations are still needed. Uchiha Kaharu and Mitokado Homura looked at Danzo in surprise. They are naturally familiar with the name Uchiha Itachi. He who is active in Anbu is now the best ninja in Anbu, and is a member of the Uchiha clan. With his power, if you launch a surprise attack inside the Uchiha territory, you can indeed minimize the loss. Even Konoha's civil war can be hidden. Itachi is indeed the best candidate in terms of ability, but is Uchiha Itachi credible? As if standing tired, Danzo walked to the side chair and sat down, glanced at the silent third generation, and then said in a deep voice. I promised to keep his brother Uchiha Sasuke alive and retain the reputation of the Uchiha clan as a condition, in exchange for Konoha's peace. Of course, I can't count on him alone, so I need Hiruzen's Anbu and Gen to join forces to block first. In the territory of the Uchiha clan, if Itachi's actions are unfavorable, Anbu will immediately take action and completely wipe out the Uchiha clan with the momentum of thunder to ensure that nothing goes wrong. Itachi. Indeed. Alas. Third generation, who had been silent for a long time, sighed deeply, and finally raised his head feebly. The confusion and hesitation instantly dissipated, replaced by an unshakable determination. I said, even if I commit a crime, I am not obligated to listen to you, am I? Aruka looked at the colorful shopping bags in front of him with an uncomfortable expression, disgustingly said, why do I want to accompany you around? Is it the so-called reform through labor? Obviously I haven't officially defined it as a prisoner. Schwanyu unceremoniously hung the shopping bag directly on Aruka, and then naturally said, isn't it normal for a man to go shopping with a woman? If you are a man, don't complain, and honestly help us get things. Hey, Don't ignore the premise, it's okay. It's only interactions between acquaintances. You and I are not familiar to that point. It's better to say that the relationship between you and me is just to the extent that we know each other's names, even if we know each other. No, so I am not obligated to help you, do my own things by myself, you lazy woman. Always be so pretentious, are you still a man? Please, can you stop talking about gender in all topics? And don't talk to me in that acquaintance's tone, I emphasize once again, we are not familiar. Yes, I know, so I beg you for these things. While talking, Aruka's body was already full of shopping bags. After putting the last shopping bag on Aruka, Crescent Moon said with ease. Then, it's getting late, Mr. Aruka, the voyeur, it's time to go back to the police department. Aruka's face became stiff, and then he sighed like a fate, and after using his ability to lighten the burden on his body, Aruka gave Xuanyu a white look and stopped talking. He had already noticed that Xuanyu had made up his mind to punish him, and now it makes no sense to say anything. Honestly, go to the police department with her, and then just take one step. Mei has indeed suffered a big loss, and now it has become a matter of course to be rectified by them, as long as it is not too much, he has to stay close. Advertisement. This time I was really hurt by Naruto, that stinky kid. It seems that tomorrow's training will have to be focused on him. Aruka, who was thinking about how to toss Naruto tomorrow, didn't actually blame Naruto too much for his pranks, nor did he alienate him, who caused him a big trouble, because he can understand why Naruto likes pranks so much. See him on weekdays. The nonsense here is like seeing a familiar figure once. Without him, it's lonely. Because of loneliness, if you want to be lonely no longer, you need to attract the attention of others. Pranks are a way to make a deep impression, and it is also the easiest way. Aruka's temperament is not small enough to tolerate such non-malicious pranks, so he just intends to punish Naruto, a little bit, and he doesn't care about other things such as why Naruto incurs the disgust of the villagers. Uchiha Izumi on the side looked puzzled at the conversation between the two as usual. You should know that Crescent Moon is usually a silent girl in front of people. It is rare that her friend can count it with the slap of a slap when she takes the initiative to talk to others. However, it is obviously abnormal to be able to talk so skillfully with a man who is not from the Uchiha clan so happily. As a result, Izumi couldn't help but come up with a thought in her mind. Could it be that Sister Xuanyu likes this dead pervert? The 13-year-old Quan Mei has reached the age when her love begins. Although she doesn't know what it feels like, she wants to get close to someone, talk to someone, and see someone all the time. And if you think about it carefully, doesn't the abnormality of the crescent moon just correspond to it? You have to know that Xuanyu is 16 years old, and the feeling must be deeper than her, so the desire to pursue something beautiful is also stronger. For this reason, it is not impossible to act directly. Thinking of this, Izumi cast a glance at Aruka who was walking in front of him, and then suddenly approached Crescent Moon's ear, and asked in a low voice. Sister Xuanyu, do you like that man? Hearing that, Xuanyu suddenly froze for a moment, and then asked dumbfoundingly, what are you talking about nonsense, how could I like him? Xuanyu did not show a trace of the girl's panic when she was knocked out of her mind, and her expression was not unusual, just like usual. Seeing this, Quanmi was immediately confused. Isn't it? Then why? I just think that guy is very interesting. Talking to that guy will always relax inexplicably, and the troubles will disappear temporarily. Well, it's almost like those adults who get drunk and forget their troubles. Escape from reality. When the words fell, a cloud of haze flashed across Xuanyu's face. I'm sorry, what are you talking about, Sister Xuanyu? Why, I don't understand. Xuanyu suddenly recovered, smiled self-deprecatingly, then shook his head and said, it's nothing, don't care. What are you two rubbing behind? It's getting dark, and I don't even know how the police department is going. You guys show me a way anyway. Hearing Aruka's complaint in front of him, Xuanyu smiled silently, speeded up his steps and followed up, leaving Izumi with a confused face still entangled in the same place. The afterglow of the setting sun shines on Aruka and Crescent Moon who are walking side by side, leaving long shadows behind them. From Izumi's perspective, how do they look like a loving couple? What Aruka didn't know was that just because of Naruto's prank, he accidentally got involved in a big event destined to be recorded in Konoha's history. Chapter 28. When I arrived at the Uchiha clan's residence, night had fallen. Aruka did not really go to where the Uchiha clan lived, but was taken directly to an interrogation room of the Konoha police department by Wanyu and Izumi. Aruka looked around. In the dimly lit space, various instruments of torture hung on the wall. Next to it was the only candle in the entire room. It seemed to make the interrogation room more psychologically stressful and the environment inside. It's a bit damp, and it makes people feel cold involuntarily. I said, even if I confess the crime, I can only be locked up for a few days at most. What's the matter with this interrogation room, which is obviously an interrogation of repeat offenders? That's right. Xuanyu smiled maliciously, then took out a notebook from the drawer and handed it to Izumi, who was still confused, and said to Aruka. But the process of the interrogation still has to go. What kind of interrogation room is used and what methods are used? The result of the interrogation is determined by Izumi and I, who are both the parties and the police, so if you have some leeway, why don't you think about how to please me and Izumi, maybe we will let you go and not pursue it anymore. Stop nonsense, you know that it was a misunderstanding, and you insisted on bringing me here. Obviously, you didn't let go of my plan. To please you is just humiliating yourself. I'm not that stupid. Xuanyu smiled, did not answer, but suddenly asked, speaking of which, you obviously have a chance to get out. As long as you follow the blonde kid's words, Kwanmei and I will have nothing to do with you. Why are you want to give up such a good opportunity? After hearing this, Izumi looked at Aruka with a confused look. She also wondered why Aruka had to give up. After all, even if everyone knew it was the prank of the blonde boy, it wouldn't do anything to him. After all, it's really like competing with a kid. What a shame. Huh, what stupid thing are you talking about? What kind of teacher is it to put the blame on the students? Hearing that, Xuanyu and Izumi looked at Aruka with some surprises. Xuanyu originally thought that Aruka and the blonde kid had other relations besides teachers and students, such as the children of friends, but the meaning in Aruka's words was obvious. Not what she thought. The so-called ninja teacher, isn't it just teaching a bunch of little kids some basic ninjutsu and ninja theory? What is the relationship between students' troubles and teachers? Izumi nodded. Obviously she agreed with this statement, because when she was in the ninja school, the teacher was basically like a robot, and left after teaching the things that should be taught. If the students make trouble, they won't be too much. No matter. I know all day long to praise such and such talents, and to learn from such and such, there is no human touch at all. However, Aruka looked at the two with dissatisfaction. You two underestimate the profession of ninja teacher, right? Oh, am I wrong? Xuanyu looked at Aruka with interest, with a touching smile on her delicate face. From your last sentence, you can see your ignorance. What does it mean that students get into trouble and teachers do not matter? Ninja schools are mostly children who have not yet formed their outlook on life and values. After all, geniuses who know how to think are only a few. The teacher's teaching largely determines the concept they set up. Therefore, it is not only their own problems that children get into trouble, but teachers also have to bear great responsibilities. Having said this, Aruka sighed suddenly. Naruto's child didn't even know who his parents were. He lacked discipline since he was a child. It's normal to be naughty. And for some reason, the villagers seemed to have a big prejudice against him. The adults' thoughts also affected their children. Naruto, who has always been alienated from his attitude towards Naruto, if I don't even care about him as a teacher, what life is there for him? A child who lacks identity since he was a child has no future. Hearing this, Xuanyu and Izumi were stunned. It was the first time they heard this. They couldn't help but look at Aruka with a little stranger look. Even Izumi, who had a very bad first impression of Aruka, looked at Aruka. They are much softer, and there are fewer prejudices towards him in my heart. Really? So you think so? Xuanyu groaned and tapped her fingers on the table habitually. The quiet interrogation room suddenly heard regular, da-da, sounds. Izumi, who was the guest assistant, did not speak, and the atmosphere in the triple room suddenly became a little dull. Well, although it seems that you are a good teacher, it's true that I can't let you go because of this. After all, a girl's body can't be shown casually. If you don't let you pay a little price, I am Izumi, but you don't have the dignity of being a girl. Even if you are a man, you should understand it. After a long time, Crescent Moon spoke again. When she said that, Aruka shrugged and said indifferently. I never expect your petty woman to show mercy. Xuanyu didn't care about the thorn in Aruka's words, and after nodding to Izumi, she suddenly sat up straight, her face suddenly became serious, and said solemnly. Name. Advertisement. Umino Iruka. Gender. Male. Age. 17. Profession. Teacher ninja. Quote. Izumi looked at the two people who were talking like elementary school students with a speechless expression. She didn't know where they came from. She laughed when she should be laughing, and she was serious when she was serious, but the two of them had nothing substantive. The relationship is really puzzling Kwanmi. After the mechanical dialogue ended, Aruka's basic information appeared in Izumi's notebook. The next step was to formally ask about the causes and consequences of the bathhouse incident. After all, the excuse that Crescent caught Aruka came here was that Aruka broke into the women's bathhouse in name. However, at this moment, Xuanyu suddenly said to Kwanmi. Kwanmei, I have some other things to ask this guy, you go out first. Kwanmei was taken aback for a moment, and looked at the Crescent Moon suspiciously. Be obedient, otherwise I will tell what happened today. Before the Crescent Moon was finished, Kwanmei suddenly disappeared with a swish, and the sound of closing the door suddenly sounded the next moment. Well, finally there are only two of us left. Aruka looked at Zan Yu with a wary face. I always feel that you disengaged her for something very bad for me. Say it in advance. Don't look at me like this. I'm going crazy, but I'm afraid of myself. Yes, don't mess around. Really. In that case, I really want to see it, but before that. Zan Yu stroked the black hair beside her ear, and then suddenly her eyes condensed. The next moment, the black pupils suddenly turned scarlet, and the three ink-colored Guyu gradually converged towards the center in the scarlet pupils. As if fused together, the ink quickly spread, and soon turned into a twinkling star pattern. Mangekyo Sharingan. Unlike the last encounter in the dark, Aruka instantly noticed the changes in the pupils of the quarter moon at such a close distance. However, before he could say anything, the twinkling star pattern in the pupils of the quarter moon suddenly turned quickly, and then only listened to the strings. Yu said softly, Feng Yunye. This is the ability that Crescent Moon possesses after awakening Mangekyo. It can read and erase the memory of the target that is facing her at his own will. As long as the operation is successful, the target will instantly lose consciousness, but... Are you messing up? Nothing happened. Aruka was still alive, and there was no reaction at all. Obviously, the failure of the pupil technique that night was not accidental. The Mangekyo Sharingan's ability, Feng Yunye, she possessed did not know why, and it did not work for Aruka at all. Chapter 29 Ninja Teacher. When I arrived at the Uchiha clan's residence, night had fallen. Aruka did not really go to where the Uchiha clan lived, but was taken directly to an interrogation room of the Konoha police department by Wanyu and Izumi. Aruka looked around. In the dimly lit space, various instruments of torture hung on the wall. Next to it was the only candle in the entire room. It seemed to make the interrogation room more psychologically stressful and the environment inside. It's a bit damp, and it makes people feel cold involuntarily. I said, even if I confess the crime, I can only be locked up for a few days at most. What's the matter with this interrogation room, which is obviously an interrogation of repeat offenders? That's right. Zanyu smiled maliciously, then took out a notebook from the drawer and handed it to Izumi, who was still confused, and said to Aruka. But the process of the interrogation still has to go. What kind of interrogation room is used and what methods are used? The result of the interrogation is determined by Izumi and I, who are both the parties and the police, so if you have some leeway, why don't you think about how to please me and Izumi, maybe we will let you go and not pursue it anymore. Stop nonsense, you know that it was a misunderstanding, and you insisted on bringing me here. Obviously, you didn't let go of my plan. To please you is just humiliating yourself. I'm not that stupid. Zanyu smiled, did not answer, but suddenly asked, speaking of which, you obviously have a chance to get out. As long as you follow the blonde kid's words, Kwanmei and I will have nothing to do with you, why are you want to give up such a good opportunity? After hearing this, Izumi looked at Aruka with a confused look. She also wondered why Aruka had to give up. After all, even if everyone knew it was the prank of the blonde boy, it wouldn't do anything to him. After all, it's really like competing with a kid. What a shame. Huh, what stupid thing are you talking about? What kind of teacher is it to put the blame on the students? Hearing that, Xuanyu and Izumi looked at Aruka with some surprises. Xuanyu originally thought that Aruka and the blonde kid had other relations besides teachers and students, such as the children of friends, but the meaning in Aruka's words was obvious. Not what she thought. The so-called ninja teacher, isn't it just teaching a bunch of little kids some basic ninjutsu and ninja theory? What is the relationship between students' troubles and teachers? Izumi nodded. Obviously she agreed with this statement, because when she was in the ninja school, the teacher was basically like a robot, and left after teaching the things that should be taught. If the students make trouble, they won't be too much. No matter, I know all day long to praise such and such talents, and to learn from such and such, there is no human touch at all. However, Aruka looked at the two with dissatisfaction. You two underestimate the profession of ninja teacher, right? Oh, am I wrong? Xuanyu looked at Aruka with interest, with a touching smile on her delicate face. From your last sentence, you can see your ignorance. What does it mean that students get into trouble and teachers do not matter? Ninja schools are mostly children who have not yet formed their outlook on life and values. After all, geniuses who know how to think are only a few. The teacher's teaching largely determines the concept they set up. Therefore, it is not only their own problems that children get into trouble, but teachers also have to bear great responsibilities. Having said this, Aruka sighed suddenly. Naruto's child didn't even know who his parents were. He lacked discipline since he was a child. It's normal to be naughty. And for some reason, the villagers seemed to have a big prejudice against him. The adults' thoughts also affected their children. Naruto, who has always been alienated from his attitude towards Naruto, if I don't even care about him as a teacher, what life is there for him? A child who lacks identity since he was a child has no future. Hearing this, Xuanyu and Izumi were stunned. It was the first time they heard this. They couldn't help but look at Aruka with a little stranger look. Even Izumi, who had a very bad first impression of Aruka, looked at Aruka. They are much softer, and there are fewer prejudices towards him in my heart. Really? So you think so? Xuanyu groaned and tapped her fingers on the table habitually. The quiet interrogation room suddenly heard regular, da-da, sounds. Izumi, who was the guest assistant, did not speak, and the atmosphere in the triple room suddenly became a little dull. Well, although it seems that you are a good teacher, it's true that I can't let you go because of this. After all, a girl's body can't be shown casually. If you don't let you pay a little price, I and Izumi but you don't have the dignity of being a girl. Even if you are a man, you should understand it. After a long time, Crescent Moon spoke again. When she said that, Aruka shrugged and said indifferently. I never expect your petty woman to show mercy. Xuanyu didn't care about the thorn in Aruka's words, and after nodding to Izumi, she suddenly sat up straight, her face suddenly became serious, and said solemnly. Name. Advertisement. Umino Iruka. Gender. Male. Age. 17. Profession. Teacher ninja. Quote. Izumi looked at the two people who were talking like elementary school students with a speechless expression. She didn't know where they came from. She laughed when she should be laughing, and she was serious when she was serious, but the two of them had nothing substantive. The relationship is really puzzling Kwanmi. After the mechanical dialogue ended, Aruka's basic information appeared in Izumi's notebook. The next step was to formally ask about the causes and consequences of the bathhouse incident. After all, the excuse that Crescent caught Aruka came here was that Aruka broke into the women's bathhouse in name. However, at this moment, Xuanyu suddenly said to Kwanmi. Kwanmei, I have some other things to ask this guy, you go out first. Quan Mei was taken aback for a moment, and looked at the crescent moon suspiciously. Be obedient, otherwise I will tell what happened today. Before the crescent moon was finished, Quan Mei suddenly disappeared with a swish, and the sound of closing the door suddenly sounded the next moment. Well, finally there are only two of us left. Aruka looked at Zan Yu with a wary face. I always feel that you disengaged her for something very bad for me. Say it in advance. Don't look at me like this. I'm going crazy but I'm afraid of myself. Yes, don't mess around. Really. In that case, I really want to see it, but before that. Zan Yu stroked the black hair beside her ear, and then suddenly her eyes condensed. The next moment, the black pupils suddenly turned scarlet, and the three ink-colored Guyu gradually converged towards the center in the scarlet pupils. As if fused together, the ink quickly spread, and soon turned into a twinkling star pattern. Mangekyo Sharingan. Unlike the last encounter in the dark, Aruka instantly noticed the changes in the pupils of the quarter moon at such a close distance. However, before he could say anything, the twinkling star pattern in the pupils of the quarter moon suddenly turned quickly, and then only listened to the strings. Yu said softly, Feng Yunye. This is the ability that Crescent Moon possesses after awakening Mangekyo. It can read and erase the memory of the target that is facing her at his own will. As long as the operation is successful, the target will instantly lose consciousness, but... Are you messing up? Nothing happened. Aruka was still alive, and there was no reaction at all. Obviously, the failure of the pupil technique that night was not accidental. The Mangekyo Sharingan's ability, Feng Yunye, she possessed did not know why, and it did not work for Aruka at all. Chapter 30 Susano. New book is on the list, please recommend. Seeking recommendation. Seeking recommendation. 2 chapters are guaranteed every day, 1 chapter is recommended for Baijia on the day, and 2 chapters for more than 500 plus. Guicho every book friend can spend a few seconds every day to vote for the little brother, to help the little brother a vote, I thank you all. Boom. With a loud noise, the Konoha Police Department building, which symbolizes the power of the Uchiha clan, instantly turned into ruins. Amidst the debris of the sky, a vigorous figure jumped out of the dust in a few rounds and fell to the clearing not far away. Are you okay? Aruka asked Izumi in his arms softly. This is the second time I have embraced Izumi, and every time it is a very romantic princess for women, but this is obviously not a charming time. Izumi responded in a low voice, not knowing why she didn't take the initiative to break free from Aruka's embrace, until Aruka confirmed that there was nothing inconvenient in her body before she took the initiative to put her down, but even though her feet fell on the ground, Izumi still subconsciously grasped with her small hands. Aruka's clothes won't let go. Aruka doesn't have the energy to pay attention to Izumi's small movements. At this time, he only feels numbness in his hands and feet. This is no way. Although he does not need to consume too much chakra, it will bring the body to his body. A huge burden, even in the previous life. He is good at using his abilities to create various attack effects, and he is also good at using his abilities to deal with attacks from people with various abilities, but he is not good at close combat. Therefore, under normal circumstances, he would habitually distance himself from the opponent when fighting. Just now, he chose to use the most direct and fastest way because he knew that the masked man would definitely use that strange ability to avoid him and would not be entangled with him. The way he rescued Quan Mei, in fact, with his current physical strength, he couldn't sustain long-term hand-to-hand combat at all. The dust in the sky has dispersed, revealing the huge figure with pink light inside. It was more than 10 meters tall, the whole body was translucent pink, holding a bow in his left hand, a sword in his right hand, and a feather arrow on his back. The upper body of a giant composed of chakra, and Xuanyu stood on the ground in the center of the giant's body, looking angrily at the masked man who was not far away from her attack just now. Kenshu Zuo care. This is troublesome. I didn't expect someone from the Uchiha clan to start Mangekyo Sharingan besides Itachi. The highest level of Sharingan Mangekyo Sharingan is nothing more than troublesome in the eyes of the masked man. It seems that he has no plans to retreat. Obviously, he is not afraid of the power of the Uchiha clan. Drink. With a loud shout, the giant's sword-holding arm smashed down, and the figure of the masked man was instantly annihilated in the huge chakra sword. At the same time, countless gravels were thrown around again, making Aruka and Izumi not far away again. Affect the pond fish. Seeing the huge rocks flying over, Izumi didn't feel a trace of fear in her heart, nor did her body react in any way. She just raised her head a little and gave Aruka an inexplicable look, and then stood quietly beside Aruka. Because she knew that those rocks could not fall on her. Sure enough, I saw Aruka raised his hand, and suddenly a blue light flashed around his body. Accompanied by Aruka's soft drink, the falling rocks stopped in midair so strangely. They did not fall again and were not bombed. Open. What is this technique? So strong. Izumi looked at the rocks floating in the air in front of her in surprise. Although she knew Aruka would protect herself, she imagined that Aruka would hug her again, instead of using this weird way. She even did it. Well, the mental preparation of being picked up by Aruka again, it turned out to be completely useless. You find a place to hide first. That guy can't deal with Crescent Moon. I'll go over and help her. With that said, Aruka is running chakra while analyzing all the visible fields around here in his mind. This is a necessary step to use force field control. Only the existing force field of the master can be used on this basis. Use abilities to control it. After analyzing all the existing force fields in a radius of 100 meters in less than 5 seconds, Aruka was about to leave. However, he just moved, only to find that the corner of his clothes was caught by a small hand. Do not underestimate me. Izumi looked at Aruka with a serious face. The original bright black pupils did not know when they turned scarlet. 3 ink-colored Guyu appeared in the scarlet pupils, looking very strange in the night. Even if I can't compare with you and Sister Xuanyu, I am not a weak person who can only shiver under your wings, please face my strength. Advertisement. I don't know why, as long as Aruka is next to her, Izumi finds herself suddenly becoming brave. Compared with the strange ability of the masked man before, she turned around and flees is not a bit brave. Forehead. Aruka looked at the stubborn Izumi in front of him speechlessly. To tell the truth, he recognized the strength of Crescent Moon. Although he hadn't cared about it before, since he could use that technique to summon giants, he could use this technique. It is impossible to be a weak person, but Izumi. Although it was a bit hurtful to be honest, she was easily grasped by the masked man just now when she was almost killed. How could he dare to believe her strength? You know that he is the masked man, even the guy he can barely cope with, the ghost knows how strong he is. What's more, if Shanyu knows that she has not protected Izumi Mi, the ghost knows how that woman will retaliate against herself. From the past, she just looked at the scenery under her skirt and was caught by the police department when she found a chance to catch it. That woman is a small eye, Aruka doesn't want to be missed by her anymore. However, just as he wanted to persuade Quan Mei to hide again, a sorrow flashed across Quan Mei's face. I do not want to stand in the position of the protected person anymore. What has happened to this child? Aruka covered his forehead and saw the unshakable firmness in Izumi's scarlet pupils, and he knew that it would be useless to persuade him. Just when Aruka was hesitant to knock her out and find a safe place to hide, she suddenly felt a scorching wave of air rushing over her face. Fire style, fluttering in the wind. The familiar tingling sensation reminded Aruka of the last battle, and immediately ignored Izumi, and immediately stepped on the ground with one foot. Chakra instantly covered the surrounding area, and then the ability suddenly activated. Anti-gravity field. The land around Aruka and Izumi suddenly rose from the ground, with countless rocks floating straight up, forming a rock barrier in front of the two of them, and the huge flame snake hit the rock barrier in the violent wind. Suddenly, the rock barrier was pierced like the last time, and countless hot rocks flew straight towards the two under the impact of the blast wind. The flame is not controlled by the force field, but the rock is within the control range of the force field. Lichang is in control. Aruka raised his hand, his ability was activated instantly, and the rock flying towards him stopped in midair without any sparks falling on Aruka. Don't be distracted on the battlefield, young man. Suddenly a negative test sound came from behind Aruka, and I saw that behind him there was a Uzumaki-shaped distortion. The masked man emerged from the center of the distortion out of thin air, holding a black iron rod in his hand. Stabbed straight behind Aruka. Damn it, when? Izumi exclaimed, but this time she was not scared to fight back by the masked man's strange ability as before. Instead, she bravely took out the kunai from the ninja bag, trying to help Aruka block the one that exudes cold light. Iron rod. However, her response was too slow and her strength was not enough to catch up. Fortunately, Aruka didn't expect her to be able to help. After calculating in an instant that it was impossible to hide at the present distance, Aruka controlled the falling rock on the top of the masked man's head to the greatest extent, making it the largest force field he can control now, and at the same time pulling Izumi. Run to the front. At this time, the iron rod is less than 1 centimeter away from Aruka. It is reasonable to say that Aruka can't hide it even if it uses abilities to strengthen the body. However, there is a falling rock that falls straight down like a cannonball on the head of the masked man, which is stabbed by the masked man. Aruka's moment, he is also very likely to be hit in the head by a falling rock that has increased the gravity more than 10 times. Of course, with the weird ability of the masked man, the terrifying falling rock will not cause any harm to him, provided that he activates the ability, and once he activates the ability, it means giving up this excellent opportunity to kill Aruka. Aruka is betting that the masked man does not dare to take risks. He has already seen that when the masked man uses his ability to avoid attacks, he cannot attack others, otherwise he would never hold on to him for so long last time. Chapter 31 Courage. New book is on the list, please recommend. Seeking recommendation. Seeking recommendation. 2 chapters are guaranteed every day, 1 chapter is recommended for Baijia on the day, and 2 chapters for more than 500 plus. Guicho every book friend can spend a few seconds every day to vote for the little brother, to help the little brother a vote, I thank you all. In the end, the black iron rod penetrated Aruka's body straight from behind, but Aruka's face did not change at all, so she pulled Izumi Mi to retreat quickly under the greatly increased physical function. Boom. Potential energy is transformed into kinetic energy, coupled with Aruka's greatest enhancement of the force field, the falling rock containing terrifying energy smashed down, and a huge pit was directly smashed into the ground. Its power was actually one more powerful than the giant controlled by the crescent moon just now. The power of the sword is much stronger. But this is still meaningless to the masked man who can ignore all physical attacks. I missed another opportunity. The masked man shook his head regretfully, but Aruka who was not far away was relieved. Just now, The masked man had a perfect chance to kill Aruka, but he calculated the falling speed of the falling rock incorrectly. As a result, he activated his weird ability ahead of time. Although the iron rod seemed to penetrate Aruka's body, it actually had no effect. As soon as Izumi stood still, she looked at Aruka's chest with an eager look, and found that she had been pierced with a big hole that she hadn't imagined, and she felt relieved. At this moment, a huge pink figure suddenly appeared in front of the two of them. Are you okay? Xuanyu panted heavily and asked the two people behind him. Through Susano's translucent body, we can see that Crescent Moon's state is not very good at this time. Although there are no wounds on her body, her delicate face can hardly hide the exhaustion, her breath is violent, and her chest is obviously abnormal. Obviously, the burden of this technique named Susano on her is not so large, but she still maintains Susano. Even though the Scarlet Mangekyo Sharingan is shaking constantly, his eyes are not far away. The masked man at the office. What supports her now is the endless hatred of her compatriots being killed. It's not all right. Feeling the chakra that has been lost by half in the body, the dizziness of continuous use of the ability and the burden caused by the ability to directly act on the body, Aruka smiled bitterly, and then said, but compared to this, you should care about yourself. That technique seems to consume a lot of you, and that guy can ignore all physical attacks. Instead of maintaining this meaningless ninjutsu, it's better to save some energy to find out the guy's weakness. Hearing this, it seems that after venting just now, Crescent Moon calmed down a bit and listened to Aruka's words. The Scarlet Sharingan gradually became like 3 Tomo, and the chakra surrounding her to maintain the giant slowly dissipated in the air. Oh, have you calmed down? So, the masked man groaned, and suddenly jumped up high. Xuanyu and Izumi subconsciously took out Kumo and threw it towards the masked man. Kunai throwing is one of the best skills of the Uchiha clan. The moment the two throwing kunai blocked the retreat around the masked man. If it is an ordinary ninja, it must pay a certain price to get out. However, the masked man is without avoiding it. Kuwu penetrated his body like this. Like water off a duck's back. After the masked man jumped to the top of the 3, his hands snapped together. The next moment, a Uzumaki-shaped twist suddenly appeared around his body, and then from the center of Uzumaki, numerous huge black iron rods suddenly flew out, carrying a strong force. The sound of the breaking wind shot straight at the 3 Aruka underneath. Aruka's face remained unchanged, and suddenly raised her foot, stepped heavily on the ground, and shouted. Anti-gravity field. Boom 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 boom. Advertisement. The whole earth seemed to be trembling, and countless huge stones flew straight up in the sky. The next moment, the black iron rod that came from flying collided with the huge stones that rose from the ground, and it suddenly shook the sky. With the roar, the entire sky was covered by debris, and the line of sight was severely obstructed. Lichang is in control. The falling gravel was suspended in the air. When Aruka forcibly moved all the debris away and looked over, the figure of the masked man was completely gone, and even the force field could not perceive his position. There is a fundamental difference between the force field of a creature and the force field of a dead object. With Aruka's keen perception of the force field, it is impossible for anyone to escape his perception. Therefore, since there is no force field fluctuation of the 4th creature nearby, it also means that the masked man is no longer nearby. Damn it, did that guy escape? Zan Yu said through gritted teeth. Hearing this, Aruka suddenly looked at Xuanyu with a wry smile. With the strange and unpredictable ability of the masked man, the word, escape, is not suitable for him. It is estimated that he could not wait for a short time and left. Bar. If you are coming to Japan, there is no rush for revenge. Compared with this, if such a big thing happened, you should go back and report to the patriarch. As he said, Aruka put his hands in kabuto, as if he wanted to go away. Don't you go with us? Izumi asked with a puzzled look. Because of the complete destruction of the police department, the crescent moon on the side didn't pay attention to Aruka for the time being. Instead, she looked at the collapsed police department building not far away and said nothing for a long time. Huh, what are you talking about? I'm not from the Uchiha clan. Why should I go to the clan chief if I have nothing to do with you? And the attack on the Konoha police department is a big deal. I'm just a small one. Teacher ninja, don't get involved. Aruka is completely standing and talking. The majority of ninja teachers in the school are of Chunin level. The few special Jonin and Jonin will never be his opponents. The whole village can show it with Aruka. People who are comparable in strength can be counted with a slap. If Konoha was really a little ninja teacher, then Konoha would have dominated the entire ninja world. How can there be so many ninja wars? But, Izumi wants to say again, don't know why, as long as Aruka is next to her, she can feel an inexplicable sense of peace, not only because of Aruka's strength, but also a feeling that Izumi herself can't explain it clearly. It felt inexplicably making her want to rely on Aruka. Izumi, that's enough. Aruka is right. He has no need to get involved. After all, he is just an outsider. Not far away suddenly came the cold voice of Xuanyu, interrupting what Izumi was about to say, and then she walked straight over, took Izumi's hand, and said to Aruka blankly. Thank you for your help just now, but this matter has nothing to do with you. You should go back quickly. After speaking, Xuanyu turned around and left with a look like Izumi who was hesitant to speak, and the two of them disappeared completely under the curtain of night. Cross the river and demolish the bridge. Or, this guy knows something terrible, but doesn't want me to get involved. Aruka raised her head and looked at the lonely cold moon in the sky, with an inexplicable look on her face. Can't care less. When Crescent Moon left, Although there was only a moment, Aruka still saw the flash of determination in her eyes when she turned around. It is definitely not just the look that people should have when going back to report it, but rather like yes. Must face the look of something that has to be faced. Sure enough, I still can't rest assured. Really, my nosy old problem can't be corrected. Aruka complained to himself, then stepped forward and walked slowly towards the residence of the Uchiha clan. Chapter 32. New book is on the list, please recommend. Seeking recommendation. Seeking recommendation. 2 chapters are guaranteed every day, 1 chapter is recommended for Baijia on the day, and 2 chapters for more than 500 plus. Guicho, every book friend can spend a few seconds every day to vote for the little brother, to help the little brother a vote. I thank you all. Izumi, promise me one thing. Walking on the quiet path leading to the residence of the Uchiha clan, Zanyu raised her head suddenly, looking at the full moon high above, and at the same time, without looking back, said to Izumi Mi, who had been uneasy since she separated from Aruka. Hearing Zanyu's formal tone, the inexplicable anxiety in Kwanmi's heart suddenly became stronger. What's wrong, Sister Xuanyu? Promise me, wait a minute, no matter what you see or encounter. After a pause, Xuanyu stopped suddenly, turned her head and looked at Kwanmei, and at this time Kwanmei finally saw the tears on her face that she didn't know when. The evening breeze swayed the narrow bangs of the crescent moon, and her delicate face revealed a touch of sorrow. After taking a deep breath, the crescent moon finally uttered a word. You must all be strong. Sister Xuanyu, what's wrong? Unable to suppress the inner anxiety, Kwanmei asked loudly towards Zanyu, but Zanyu did not answer. Instead, she walked forward on her own. Kwanmei gritted her teeth and forced herself to calm down. In fact, Izumi has long discovered that something is wrong. The police department is not far from where the Uchiha clan lives. In the past, even if they came back late, there would be patrolling clansmen coming to say hello, but now it's quiet and weird. Not only there are no patrolling clansmen, there was no light even in the residence that could be seen not far away. It's like, there is no one inside. Thinking of this, Izumi's heart trembled suddenly. She didn't dare to think anymore, and hurriedly kept up with the crescent moon in front of her. After a while, the two walked into the residence of the Uchiha clan. In a quiet street, the two people's shoes made a crisp, da-da, sound when they stepped on the masonry floor. Although it was their own sound, it was like a hammer hitting their hearts. The extremely depressing atmosphere made Kwanmei a little overwhelmed. Angry. Just in this deathly silence, 2 clear wind-breaking sounds suddenly came out. The crescent moon who was walking in front condensed his eyes, suddenly raised his hand, scratched in the void, and swayed slightly after catching something. For a moment, only a ding was heard, and a kunai flew to the side like this and fell to the ground with a series of crisp sounds. Quan Mi reacted instantly, quickly took out Kuwu from the ninja bag and placed it in front of her, watching the direction where Kuwu flew out vigilantly. Xuanyu closed her eyes. When she opened her eyes again, her black pupils had completely changed to Mangekyo Sharingan. Then she suddenly turned around and looked in the direction from which Izumi was facing her back, and said coldly. Should you say that you really inherited Shisui's will? Uchiha Itachi. Hearing the familiar name in Zanyu's mouth that seemed to be carved into the depths of her soul, Kwanmi's body suddenly became a little stiff, and she turned around mechanically, looking in the direction Zanyu was facing. The next moment, accompanied by a clear with the sound of footsteps, a grim young man wearing Anbu equipment and holding a bloody short sword slowly walked out of the darkness. Mangekyo Sharingan. That's how it is, it's no wonder that he can survive from that guy. Itachi, why are you here? Kwanmei looked at the short sword that kept dripping blood in Itachi's hand, and forced to resist the anxiety in her heart and asked. However, this does not require an answer at all. This is the residence of the Uchiha clan. At this time, no one other than the clan will come here. In other words, the blood of the knife in the hands of Itachi can only belong to the Uchiha clan. There is no need to worry about who the blood is. From Crescent Moon's reaction, it can be seen that it must be Itachi who threw kunai at them just now. In addition to the deathly silence of the entire Uchiha family residence, Kwanmei may pass the assessment. Elite Chunin, even if there are some defects in her personality, it will not affect her basic judgment. Advertisement. In other words, the blood in your hands. Sure enough, everyone, including the captain, Kwanmi's family, and my grandmother, has been killed by you, right? The sound of Crescent Moon was very calm, and her expression did not fluctuate, as calm as a pool of stagnant water, but no one knew what a huge wave hidden under her calm surface. Itachi hadn't spoken yet, but Kwanmei on the side said with difficulty, Itachi. Sister Xuanyu said, is it true? You really give everyone to. There are only 5 Uchiha people still alive, and. Itachi slowly put the short sword in his hand back into the scabbard behind him, then leaned his hand into the ninja bag behind him, and said blankly, it will become 3 soon. When the words were over, Itachi quickly formed a seal with both hands, and spit out a huge fireball in his mouth. Then, before the fireball flew out, Itachi moved quickly to throw out several shurikens prepared in advance. Fire style, Impatience Claw Red. The shuriken, which had been warming up in the high-speed rotation, became more scorching under the blessing of the fireball, turning into several flame whirlwinds and flew towards Izumi and the crescent moon. How? Why? Itachi's words and his actions completely shattered Quan Mi's last hope in her heart, leaving her only cruel reality. In the face of Itachi's pure kunai throwing technique, if he avoids it, he will only lead to a ruin step by step in the route he used to induce kunai. However, Xuanyu's complexion still remains the same, and he takes a step forward and turns his back. Looking at Quan Mei, whose eyes were so empty as if she had lost everything, she said solemnly. Quan Mei, remember what I told you just now. When the words fell, Xuanyu's eyes condensed, and a mechanical click suddenly sounded around her body. The next moment, a pink barrier appeared in front of her out of thin air, showing the shape of a rib. Ding 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 ding. The scorching shuriken hit the barrier, and after making a few crisp sounds, it fell to the ground feebly, while the crescent moon, which blocked the attack, did not stop using Susano. Instead, it increased the pupil power, causing the original chakra skeleton to suddenly growing flesh and blood. It soon became a giant with a bow and a sword in one hand. Xuanyu controlled the giant to slash a sword at the top of Itachi's head. Itachi didn't seem to react and was instantly split in half, but the next moment his body that was split in half suddenly turned into a bang, two pieces of wood. Seeing this, Zanyu frowned suddenly. At this moment, a strong red light burst out beside her Susano. Immediately after Zanyu, she felt a strong force coming, and her body suddenly followed Susano towards her. Flew away and finally stopped after knocking down several residential houses. I saw Susano flying the crescent moon. It was a huge fire-red chakra giant that was very similar to the pink Susano. In the translucent body of the fire-red Susano, there was a Mangekyo in the shape of a pair of large black windmills. Sharingan's Uchiha Itachi. Ended. Itachi controlled the red Susano and raised his huge arm, and then moved towards the bottom without any hesitation to the changes in the surroundings, as if she had lost everything. Quan Mei, whose eyes were so hollow, slammed down. Danger. Izumi, run away. After Crescent Moon stood up, when he saw Susano's raised fist, his face changed drastically, and he quickly controlled Susano to open his bow and arrow. The next moment, a huge chakra arrow turned towards the fiery red with a violent breaking wind. Susano flew away. However, it was still too slow. At the speed of Chakra's arrow, I am afraid that Chunmei would be beaten into meat sauce before he touched Susano of Itachi. Izumi did not react at all to the death crisis above her head, nor did she hear the cry from the bottom of Zanyu. She was still immersed in the huge blow of her parents being killed by the person she admired most. At the moment, I only heard a loud shout coming from a short distance. Lichang is in control. Quan Mei's surroundings suddenly vibrated violently, and then a huge rock suddenly rose from the ground and hit the smashed arm, causing Susano's arm to move slightly. At the same time, a rock on Quan Mei's side suddenly appeared. Coming out, slammed into her quickly, and slammed Quan Mei out before Susano's fist fell. Boom. The fiery red fist fell to the ground, making a huge bombardment. The oscillating air pressure immediately shook Quan Mei, who was knocked into the air, to a higher place. At this moment, a vigorous figure slammed into the ground. He jumped up, hugged Quan Mei in midair, and then landed smoothly on the eaves underneath. Chapter 33 to Susano. New book is on the list, please recommend. Seeking recommendation. Seeking recommendation. 2 chapters are guaranteed every day, 1 chapter is recommended for Baijia on the day, and 2 chapters for more than 500 plus. Guicho every book friend can spend a few seconds every day to vote for the little brother, to help the little brother a vote, I thank you all. Izumi, promise me one thing. Walking on the quiet path leading to the residence of the Uchiha clan, Zanyu raised her head suddenly, looking at the full moon high above, and at the same time, without looking back, said to Izumi Mi who had been uneasy since she separated from Aruka. Hearing Zanyu's formal tone, the inexplicable anxiety in Quan Mi's heart suddenly became stronger. What's wrong? Sister Xuanyu, promise me, wait a minute, no matter what you see or encounter. After a pause, Xuanyu stopped suddenly, turned her head and looked at Quan Mei, and at this time Quan Mei finally saw the tears on her face that she didn't know when. The evening breeze swayed the narrow bangs of the crescent moon, and her delicate face revealed a touch of sorrow. After taking a deep breath, the crescent moon finally uttered a word. You must all be strong. Sister Xuanyu, what's wrong? Unable to suppress the inner anxiety, Quan Mei asked loudly towards Zanyu, but Zanyu did not answer. Instead, she walked forward on her own. Quan Mei gritted her teeth and forced herself to calm down. In fact, Izumi has long discovered that something is wrong. The police department is not far from where the Uchiha clan lives. In the past, even if they came back late, there would be patrolling clansmen coming to say hello, but now it's quiet and weird. Not only there are no patrolling clansmen, there was no light even in the residence that could be seen not far away. It's like, there is no one inside. Thinking of this, Izumi's heart trembled suddenly, she didn't dare to think anymore, and hurriedly kept up with the crescent moon in front of her. After a while, the two walked into the residence of the Uchiha clan. In a quiet street, the two people's shoes made a crisp, da-da, sound when they stepped on the masonry floor. Although it was their own sound, it was like a hammer hitting their hearts. The extremely depressing atmosphere made Quan Mei a little overwhelmed. Angry. Just in this deathly silence, 2 clear wind-breaking sounds suddenly came out. The crescent moon who was walking in front condensed his eyes, suddenly raised his hand, scratched in the void, and swayed slightly after catching something. For a moment, only a ding was heard, and a kunai flew to the side like this and fell to the ground with a series of crisp sounds. Quan Mi reacted instantly, quickly took out Kuwu from the ninja bag and placed it in front of her, watching the direction where Kuwu flew out vigilantly. Xuanyu closed her eyes. When she opened her eyes again, her black pupils had completely changed to Mangekyo Sharingan. Then she suddenly turned around and looked in the direction from which Izumi was facing her back, and said coldly. Should you say that you really inherited Shisui's will? Uchiha Itachi. Hearing the familiar name in Zan Yu's mouth that seemed to be carved into the depths of her soul, Quan Mi's body suddenly became a little stiff, and she turned around mechanically, looking in the direction Zan Yu was facing. The next moment, accompanied by a clear with the sound of footsteps, a grim young man wearing Anbu equipment and holding a bloody short sword slowly walked out of the darkness. Mangekyo Sharingan. That's how it is, it's no wonder that he can survive from that guy. Itachi, why are you here? Quan Mei looked at the short sword that kept dripping blood in Itachi's hand, and forced to resist the anxiety in her heart and asked. However, this does not require an answer at all. This is the residence of the Uchiha clan. At this time, no one other than the clan will come here. In other words, the blood of the knife in the hands of Itachi can only belong to the Uchiha clan. There is no need to worry about who the blood is. From Crescent Moon's reaction, it can be seen that it must be Itachi who threw kunai at them just now. In addition to the deathly silence of the entire Uchiha family residence, Quan Mei may pass the assessment. Elite Chunin, even if there are some defects in her personality, it will not affect her basic judgment. Advertisement. In other words, the blood in your hands, sure enough, everyone, including the captain, Quan Mi's family, and my grandmother, has been killed by you, right? The sound of Crescent Moon was very calm, and her expression did not fluctuate, as calm as a pool of stagnant water, but no one knew what a huge wave hidden under her calm surface. Itachi hadn't spoken yet, but Quan Mei on the side said with difficulty, Itachi. Sister Xuanyu said, is it true? You really give everyone to. There are only 5 Uchiha people still alive, and. Itachi slowly put the short sword in his hand back into the scabbard behind him, then leaned his hand into the ninja bag behind him, and said blankly, it will become 3 soon. When the words were over, Itachi quickly formed a seal with both hands, and spit out a huge fireball in his mouth. Then, before the fireball flew out, Itachi moved quickly to throw out several shurikens prepared in advance. Fire style, Impatience Claw Red. The shuriken, which had been warming up in the high-speed rotation, became more scorching under the blessing of the fireball, turning into several flame whirlwinds and flew towards Izumi and the crescent moon. How? Why? Itachi's words and his actions completely shattered Quan Mi's last hope in her heart, leaving her only cruel reality. In the face of Itachi's pure kunai throwing technique, if he avoids it, he will only lead to a ruin step by step in the route he used to induce kunai. However, Xuanyu's complexion still remains the same, and he takes a step forward and turns his back. Looking at Quan Mei, whose eyes were so empty as if she had lost everything, she said solemnly. Quan Mei, remember what I told you just now. When the words fell, Xuanyu's eyes condensed, and a mechanical click suddenly sounded around her body. The next moment, a pink barrier appeared in front of her out of thin air, showing the shape of a rib. Ding 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 ding. The scorching shuriken hit the barrier, and after making a few crisp sounds, it fell to the ground feebly, while the crescent moon, which blocked the attack, did not stop using Susano. Instead, it increased the pupil power, causing the original chakra skeleton to suddenly growing flesh and blood. It soon became a giant with a bow and a sword in one hand. Xuanyu controlled the giant to slash a sword at the top of Itachi's head. Itachi didn't seem to react and was instantly split in half, but the next moment his body that was split in half suddenly turned into a bang, 2 pieces of wood. Seeing this, Zan Yu frowned suddenly. At this moment, a strong red light burst out beside her Susano. Immediately after Zan Yu, she felt a strong force coming, and her body suddenly followed Susano towards her. Flew away and finally stopped after knocking down several residential houses. I saw Susano flying the crescent moon. It was a huge fire-red chakra giant that was very similar to the pink Susano. In the translucent body of the fire-red Susano, there was a Mangekyo in the shape of a pair of large black windmills. Sharingan's Uchiha Itachi. Ended. Itachi controlled the red Susano and raised his huge arm, and then moved towards the bottom without any hesitation to the changes in the surroundings, as if she had lost everything. Quan Mei, whose eyes were so hollow, slammed down. Danger. Izumi, run away. After Crescent Moon stood up, when he saw Susano's raised fist, his face changed drastically, and he quickly controlled Susano to open his bow and arrow. The next moment, a huge chakra arrow turned towards the fiery red with a violent breaking wind. Susano flew away. However, it was still too slow. At the speed of Chakra's arrow, I am afraid that Chunmei would be beaten into meat sauce before he touched Susano of Itachi. Izumi did not react at all to the death crisis above her head, nor did she hear the cry from the bottom of Zan Yu. She was still immersed in the huge blow of her parents being killed by the person she admired most. At the moment, I only heard a loud shout coming from a short distance. Lichang is in control. Quan Mei's surroundings suddenly vibrated violently, and then a huge rock suddenly rose from the ground and hit the smashed arm, causing Susano's arm to move slightly. At the same time, a rock on Kwanme's side suddenly appeared. Coming out, slammed into her quickly, and slammed Kwanme out before Susano's fist fell. Boom. The fiery red fist fell to the ground, making a huge bombardment. The oscillating air pressure immediately shook Kwanme, who was knocked into the air, to a higher place. At this moment, a vigorous figure slammed into the ground. He jumped up, hugged Kwanme in midair, and then landed smoothly on the eaves underneath. Chapter 34 The End of the Old and the Beginning of the New. New book is on the list, please recommend. Seeking recommendation. Seeking recommendation. Guecho every book friend can spend a few seconds every day to vote for the little brother, to help the little brother a vote, I thank you all. In addition, the book friend group, 599,237,898, all friends are welcome to join. The chakra arrow accurately hit the fiery red Susano's arm, and the huge impact directly smashed the arm. The remaining chakra of the arrow penetrated Susano's incomplete shoulder tribe to the ground, and suddenly blasted a 10-foot pit. The fiery red Susano gradually dissipated into the air, and the crescent moon on the other side also released Susano after using the chakra arrow, and then ran toward the eaves of Kwanme's falling with a nervous expression. At this time, on the eaves, Aruka looked helplessly at Uchiha Izumi who had fainted in his arms. When he arrived, he just saw Susano's fist hanging high above Izumi's head, so he activated his power without thinking. Rescued. What puzzled him was that when she was holding Kwanme's soft body in the air, she was clearly conscious. Then she raised her head and glanced at herself, not knowing why. After recognizing herself, her eyes suddenly changed. It was a bit strange, and finally fainted so inexplicably. Click. Xuanyu quickly came next to Aruka and looked at Izumi that he was carrying with a worried expression on her face. Kwanme is okay. Don't worry, she's fine, she just passed out. Hearing this, Xuanyu breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, an unnatural distortion suddenly appeared in the place where Itachi was not far away. Then, the masked man appeared next to Itachi out of thin air. As that guy yet to leave? It seems that the two little guys can't solve it. The masked man looked at Aruka standing on the eaves, and said with a unique low tone. Hearing this, Itachi nodded expressionlessly, agreeing with the masked man's judgment. I played against him. That guy is very strong. I'm not sure that I can kill him. Even if you and I join forces, I probably won't be able to kill him before Anbu arrives. And the little girl who turned on Mangekyo Sharingan. Well, that's it. The masked man groaned, and then said helplessly, although it's a pity, let's retreat now. Hearing this, Xuanyu's eyes suddenly became cold. The next moment, a burst of pink light burst out from the eaves. Susano appeared in an instant, and then quickly opened his bow and arrows, aiming at the two people underneath. Don't want to escape. When the words fell, a bunch of chakra arrows that contained terrifying energy came out, flying towards the two of them extremely fast, and within a moment, they were completely crushed where they were, and there was a loud explosion. At the same time, the sky was full of dust. Don't waste your effort. If the guy in the mask really wants to leave, with his spatial ability, no one can stop him even if he leaves the boy with him. As if to confirm Aruka's judgment, when the dust dissipated completely, only a large hole was left in place, and the hair that had long since disappeared from the masked man and Uchiha Itachi were not found. Upon seeing this, Xuanyu unwillingly slammed a fist on the side pillar, leaving a deep fist mark on it, as well as a conspicuous blood red in the fist mark. Advertisement. Damn it, Uchiha Itachi, and the man wearing the mask, one day, I will sacrifice their heads to the undead of the Uchiha clan. As if to echo the angry cry of the crescent moon, Susano, who had not yet dissipated, suddenly raised his arms and raised his eyes to the sky and let out a sky-shaking roar. The sonic waves directly crushed all the nearby buildings. In a short while, this only the building where 3 people settled in Pionji survived, and other places were completely reduced to ruins with the disappearance of Susano. Aruka sighed. He probably knew what was going on when he first arrived at Uchiha's residence. Under the force field's perception, all the force field fluctuations of the entire Uchiha clan residence clearly appeared in Aruka's mind, and almost all of them were dead. The force field of things fluctuates, and the force field of living beings fluctuates. Except for Crescent Moon and Izumi, and Uchiha Itachi in battle, there is only Uchiha Sasuke who has lost consciousness on a street far away from here. All other members of the Uchiha clan were killed. For Uchiha Itachi, Aruka was quite impressed by him. After all, he was his first opponent in the world, and his strength was good. It is difficult to not be impressed. Although Itachi was wearing a mask that night, he recognized Itachi as the Captain Anbu who fought with him that night as soon as we met, even on the way here. After all, the force field fluctuations that everyone unconsciously emits are different. Yes, even though Aruka cannot control the force field of living creatures, he can perceive it. As long as he wants, he can completely forget people's faces, and can remember people only by force field fluctuations. This is why he can recognize them in an instant. The reason for Uchiha Itachi. Not only that, with force field perception, Aruka can even distinguish the deity and the clone. Even in the face of hundreds of shadow clones, Aruka can find the body within 10 seconds, because no matter how similar the clone is to the body, the clone is unconsciously emitted. The force field fluctuations can never be completely synchronized with the body. Aruka didn't know about Uchiha's genocide, but from Crescent Moon's words, there were only two people who attacked. One was the masked man who almost uprooted the Konoha police force, and the other slaughtered the entirety. The Uchiha clan, Uchiha Itachi, who never let go of even young children. The identity of the masked man is mysterious. It can be seen from this action that he should not belong to Konoha. After all, as Konoha Anbu, Uchiha Itachi will slaughter the Uchiha clan, regardless of whether there is any inside story hidden in it. He is defined as rebelliousness and cannot stay in Konoha. Since the masked man joins him, it is impossible to be a subordinate of Konoha's high-level subordinates, and with such strange power, it is difficult to imagine that Konoha's high-level can control this, the strongest of the ranks. Then, it can be determined that the third-generation old man did not fool himself, and the senior management did not attack him anymore, so he could be a ninja teacher with peace of mind, and he has truly integrated into the world in terms of identity. Although this is something to be happy about, Aruka couldn't be happy anyway when looking at Izumi, who was sleeping with her brows frowning in her arms. It is true that he is not familiar with Zanyu, and has nothing to do with Kwanmei, but this does not mean that he can ignore the misfortunes of others. If he can't see it, it's all right. At most, he will sigh with emotion, but now he was standing in the residence of the Uchiha clan, and saw with his own eyes that two young girls had to bear the hatred of annihilation. How could he be indifferent? When the crescent moon finally finished venting and his expression calmed down, Aruka walked to her kneeling on the ground, patted her on the shoulder, and asked softly. Xuanyu, what should you know about the reason Uchiha Itachi slaughtered his own people? As a Uchiha clan, Uchiha Itachi personally killed all the clan members is not normal in itself. To say that there is no inside story, and I do not believe in killing Aruka, there is absolutely no reason to drive Uchiha Itachi to do such an unthinkable thing. When Konoha's police department opened just now, Xuanyu's unnatural attitude could tell that she didn't want him to get involved because she knew something. What's the reason? The most important thing. Zanyu did not answer Aruka's words head-on, but smiled self-deprecatingly. After standing up tremblingly, he glanced at the messy surroundings, his face gradually becoming indifferent. Almost all of my people died, and the most important people to me also died. They all died in the hands of that guy. This is the result. As for the reason why that guy did this, I probably know, but for me in terms, no matter what the reason, it cannot be the reason for everyone to be killed. Therefore, I will never forgive that guy in my life. That's right. Well, forget it, since you don't want to say that I don't bother to ask. Anyway, this is not something that my little ninja teacher should care about. Aruka said to herself, and then thought for a moment. She felt that she should have nothing to do with her now. After all, there was such a big movement just now, unless Konoha Anbu died completely, otherwise it would never be impossible to have no reaction at all. Since there is nothing wrong with him, it is almost time to leave. Anyway, he is not a member of the Uchiha clan. I just need to submit a report on the matter to the old man of third generation tomorrow. There is no need to stay and wait for Anbu to ask. Thinking of this, Aruka immediately prepared to hand over Izumi to Zanyu and leave. However, at this moment, Zanyu suddenly said. Recently, I need to leave the village for a period of time to do some things. I will leave it to you for the time being. Please do not give her to Anbu or anyone. The specific reason and the fact that that guy slaughtered the whole family. The reason, I will tell you everything when I come back, as long as you still want to know at that time. Without waiting for Aruka's response, Zanyu suddenly jumped, and then in a few consecutive jumps, the figure completely disappeared under the dark night, leaving Aruka with a bewildered face facing the long night alone. Chapter 35, End of Volume, Returning to Daily Life, Changing People. New book is on the list, please recommend. Seeking recommendation. Seeking recommendation. Guicho, every book friend can spend a few seconds every day to vote for the little brother, to help the little brother a vote. I thank you all. In addition, the book friend group, 599,237,898, all friends are welcome to join. Hokage office. Third generation put down the report in his hand and looked at Aruka on the opposite side with a weird look. You mean, you were caught by Uchiha Xuanyu at the Konoha police department because you broke into the female soup, and then happened to be attacked by the masked man, and finally you met Uchiha Itachi. Hearing the words, break into the female bath, Aruka immediately scratched his head in embarrassment. Behind him is Uchiha Izumi, who has been holding onto his clothes since leaving the house in the morning. Probably so. Humph. The one-eyed old man with a crossed scar on his chin suddenly snorted, obviously not believing Aruka's words. Third generation glanced at Danzo inexplicably, his expression a bit complicated. Last night, when Anbu and Gen arrived, the Uchiha clan was basically annihilated. Like the original plan, Uchiha Sasuke became a survivor. However, contrary to the plan, Aruka appeared in the Uchiha clan's residence strangely. He also rescued two girls from the Uchiha clan. Because of his poop-chucking stick, he had a very safe plan, but there were two big troubles. We must know that although the planner of destroying the Uchiha clan is Danzo, behind him is the consensus of the entire Konoha high level. Uchiha Sasuke will ignore these factors because of hatred, but what about Uchiha Xuanyu and Uchiha Izumi? What would they think of Konoha if they knew the truth? These are two extremely unstable factors. The best solution is to solve them secretly as Danzo suggested to him before. But Aruka doesn't know this. He is probably still in the mist now, and he doesn't know why he insisted on taking Uchiha Izumi last night, but now that the matter has become an established fact, he can only find a way to deal with it. Uchiha Crescent Moon is nowhere to be found, and Uchiha Izumi is now following Aruka without departing from it. There is no chance at all, and third generation is a little unacceptable to Danzo's proposal to kill him. Of course, the most important thing is to take care of Aruka's feelings. Now Aruka is no longer an ordinary chunin and ninja teacher. From his battle with the best Uchiha Itachi in Anbu that night, it can be seen that it is also Jonin's strength, coupled with his blood succession limit, force field control even in Jonin, it is also a top-notch existence, so his attitude must not be ignored. There is another concern. The reason why Uchiha Schwanyu suddenly left Konoha was because he knew the truth of the Uchiha clan extermination, and deliberately entrusted Uchiha Izumi to Aruka to test Konoha's attitude. If Uchiha Izumi dies or has a bad life, she will be completely hostile to Konoha, who has never been there. With her power, without restraint, it is likely to pose a great threat to Konoha. On the contrary, if Konoha can treat Uchiha Izumi, there is a chance to relax the relationship. It is very simple to determine whether she knows the truth about Uchiha's genocide. If she knows, she will never return to Konoha in a short time. On the contrary, it proves that she does not know. Of the two possibilities, the third generation is more inclined to the first one. After all, if she didn't know the truth, it was almost impossible to leave Konoha in a hurry. And the reason why it was entrusted to Aruka and not to others, I think it should be because she realized that Aruka was indeed the one who broke into this incident accidentally. Thinking of this, third generation sighed helplessly. Aruka, since Uchiha Crescent asks you to take care of Uchiha Izumi, then she will leave it to you. When the words fell, Danzo on the side suddenly dissatisfied and said, Hiruzen, Uchiha Itachi is the sinner who slaughtered the Uchiha clan. As one of the survivors of the Uchiha clan, she must bear this hatred. So in order to get revenge, she should naturally join Root. Only in this way can she be the greatest provide convenience for her revenge to the limit. Advertisement. With that, Danzo suddenly turned his head and looked at Izumi who was hiding behind Aruka. Little girl, by joining Root you can have the power of revenge. Trust me, with your measure and the assistance of Root you will definitely be able to sharpen Uchiha Itachi, as long as you want. Aruka suddenly felt a sudden tremor in the little hand holding her hem. When she turned her head and looked over, she found Izumi was looking at herself with a confused expression. Aruka shrugged indifferently, and said calmly, well, although Schwanyu did entrust you to me temporarily, it does not mean that you have to follow her arrangements. You are Uchiha Izumi, not a marionette in the hands of others. So, what do you want to do? How do you do it? Follow your heart and decide for yourself. Follow the heart. Do you? After murmured a few words, the confusion in Izumi's eyes gradually dissipated. She suddenly raised her head and glanced at him with a look that Aruka could not read. Finally, she let go of the small hand that had been holding Aruka's clothes, and then walked to Aruka, facing third generation and Danzo head on. Upon seeing this, a hint of joy flashed across Danzo's old face. Oh, have you decided to join Root? Third generation also looked at Izumi with a little nervousness. Although Izumi's strength is not as good as Uchiha Crescent, who has become an elite Jonin, she was also the genius who started 3 Tomo Sharingan at the age of 13. If you join Gen, Danzo will undoubtedly have a strong subordinate with Gen's brainwashing training, and the dark side will increase in strength, which is really not a good thing for him. More importantly, if Izumi joins Gen because of hatred, the ghost knows what attitude the missing Uchiha Crescent will have. The only one who remained indifferent from start to finish was Aruka. After all, he didn't care about Izumi's stay. Like he said, Izumi has the right to choose his own life. Under Konoha's light and dark Hokage gazes, Izumi Mi shook her head. I want to stay with Mr. Aruka. Danzo's face froze, but the old face of third generation flashed with joy. Then this matter is so settled. Humph. Danzo couldn't do anything about it, he gave a cold snort, turned around, and left Hokage's office after a while. So, well, that guy didn't give me a chance to refuse anyway. After bidding farewell to the old third generation man, Aruka took Izumi to search the streets. After buying some daily necessities, Izumi suddenly said that there was something to go back to the Uchiha family residence, so Aruka could only carry a bunch of women. The children's things came home in the weird eyes of passers-by. As for Uchiha Sasuke, Aruka also mentioned it, but there seems to be a special reason that Sasuke must stay in the Uchiha family residence by himself, and even third generation seriously reminded him not to worry about it anymore. Can only give up. Why did Izumi not stay with the Uchiha clan? Aruka can probably guess that women must be more emotional than men. Uchiha clan has become her sad place now. Staying there will only increase the sentimentality, and is more important. Yes, Uchiha Itachi who destroyed the Uchiha clan is Sasuke's elder brother. If he stays in the Uchiha clan's residence, it would be a torture to face the enemy's brother every day. After throwing Izumi's things into the empty room prepared for her, Aruka walked out of the house. The streets are full of people coming and going as usual. Obviously, the prosperous Konoha will not decline due to the demise of a large family. For the Uchiha family, who has become a glorious page in Konoha's history, people are at best. Only after a meal will talk about how powerful the Uchiha clan was. Under the harsh sunlight at noon, Aruka stretched for a long time, then put his hands in the pants kabuto, and walked slowly towards the ninja school. Then, it's also time to face those stinky boys. Chapter 36. Elimination System. Today, I finally recommended 100, and the third watch is sent. Before Friday this week, as long as 100 is recommended on the same day, it will be a third watch. Hope you Kun will continue to work hard. Comma 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 comma. Ms. Aruka, I'm sorry, Before entering the classroom, Aruka was stopped in the corridor by Naruto with a regretful look. Before Naruto could finish speaking, Aruka interrupted him. Stop talking, Naruto, I have forgotten what happened yesterday. Aruka looked at Naruto gently, stretched out his hand, and gently rubbed his dazzling blonde hair, just like a good old man. Ms. Aruka, Naruto was so moved that his eyes were red, but he hoped that Aruka could teach him a lesson. Forgiving him so generously now made him feel more uncomfortable and regretted his mischief yesterday. However, at this moment, Naruto suddenly felt a huge, familiar suction coming from under his feet. Do you think I would say that? Aruka rubbed Naruto's blonde hand and pressed it down suddenly. The original gentle expression instantly turned into an incomparable ghost, making Shikamaru, Choji and Hinata of Naruto startled when seeing Aruka generously forgiving Naruto in the corner. Before Naruto could react, he was sucked tightly to the ground by the huge suction, unable to move no matter how hard he struggled, and then only heard Aruka snorted coldly. HMPH, brat, it hurt me so badly. Don't think that, just apologize and it's over. Just think about it here, and come to the playground when you can move. Aruka didn't exaggerate. After all, if he was detained overnight yesterday or something, he would at most scold Naruto at the school the next day. But his experience last night was much more serious than detention. All the enemies he encountered when he came to this world met last night, and he barely witnessed the genocide of the Uchiha clan. In the end, he was killed by the moon. Entrusted to take care of Uchiha Izumi, there was an extra package inexplicably, and it was almost unlucky. If it weren't for Naruto's pranks, how could there be so much trouble? The moment Aruka opened the sliding door and walked into the classroom, although it was not time for class, everyone quieted down strangely. Obviously, Aruka's name of violent ghosts has been deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. You will get nervous, and without the shield of Naruto, who dares to touch Aruka? Oh, kids, you haven't seen you for so long, you've become a lot better, it's pretty good. The corners of everyone's mouth twitched. They could hear the sound of heavy objects falling clearly outside the classroom. They hadn't seen it for a week. It seemed that the violent teacher had become more violent. They didn't want to be like Naruto. Pass. Seeing no one responded, Aruka shrugged, it was only expected, nothing to care about. You should remember my teaching mode. When he walked to the podium, Aruka's mouth twitched, revealing a smile that shocked everyone below. After a while, no one answered Aruka's question. Without Naruto, no one wanted to be the first bird. Upon seeing this, Aruka's face gradually turned cold. It seems that you don't remember what I said. Okay, now, all of you will run around the village for me until someone remembers it. Hearing this, everyone's complexion changed suddenly, and they hurriedly said. I remember, Mr. Aruka said that I don't teach ninjutsu. I also remembered, Mr. Aruka said that he only teaches the basics. Ms. Aruka said, quote. A gang of kids rushed to almost repeat what Aruka had said to them, even the cruel words he had said to Naruto. In some ways, people were forced to return. Really, any potential can burst out. Aruka waved his hand, and everyone calmed down. Advertisement. It seems that you all still remember that. In this case, I don't bother to waste time with self-study classes for theory classes in the classroom. Starting today, my class has no theory classes, all of which are on-site training. Hey what? Stop talking nonsense. Sato, take the score sheet I asked you to record, and give you 5 minutes to prepare. After 5 minutes, all staff will train on the playground. Hey, I will directly score 0 points collectively, all for me to run 5 laps around the village, don't even think about going home after running. As soon as Aruka's voice fell, everyone covered their mouths subconsciously, and the whole classroom suddenly became completely silent. Upon seeing this, Aruka nodded in satisfaction. That's right. This is the majesty that a ninja teacher should have. Isn't the ninja teacher who can't let the students obediently be called the ninja teacher? Just call the nanny. After leaving the classroom, Aruka went straight back to the staff room, took the score sheet and an empty form that were used to test the physical reaction and teamwork of the 9 little ghosts last time, and left without noticing that the others in the staff room looked at him. Why are some weird gazes? When Aruka came to the playground, he found that even Naruto, who was all dirty, had arrived, and Hinata, with a flushed face, carefully wiped the stains on his body with a handkerchief. At a young age, he appeared to be a good mother. Appearance. By the way, I was a little concerned before. The child Hinata looked at Naruto and looked a little wrong. Shaking his head, Aruka didn't bother to think about the grotesqueness between the children, although he didn't deliberately observe and knew that Sakura and Ino would definitely like Sasuke. Hinata, don't waste your effort. Anyway, waiting for all of you to have a clean body. Quote. Hearing this, everyone looked at Aruka with doubts, and an unknown premonition gradually emerged in their hearts. I always feel that nothing good will happen to this violent teacher saying this. Sure enough, I just heard Aruka say in a very casual tone. I didn't give you classes last week because I had something to do. I will make up all of it this week. You must be mentally prepared. It is best to prepare your parents at home with medicines for trauma, especially those wearing a practice ring. You should know my training method. That, Mr. Aruka, this time is still the same as last time, do you train separately? Sato is careful and authentic. Aruka glanced at him unexpectedly. Last time, he took the lead in accusing himself of not treating him differently. This time he also took the initiative to stand up. It seems that this kid is quite courageous. No, this is a special case. You train with 9 of them, but I will explain one thing in advance. Aruka said. Suddenly his eyes swept over 8 other people with practice rings besides Sasuke who was still lying in the hospital, his eyes condensed, and he said solemnly. Wait for the training to be carried out. If you can't win the top 8, and anyone who is surpassed by others, then take off the practice ring yourself and give it to someone who surpasses you. After all, even if you or I have also missed my eyes. If any of you can't respond to my expectations, just get out. Hearing that, Naruto, little Sakura and the others suddenly looked at them, and subconsciously touched the ring on their hands. They had to admit that although Aruka looked bad, violent and ghostly, but they gave them the practice ring. It's definitely a good thing. They once took off the practice ring secretly, and then found that both strength and speed have been improved by a notch. Shikamaru's father even said that compared to weight training, the biggest advantage of this ring is that it does not cause harm to the human body. No one complained about the inconvenience brought to daily life by the practice ring anymore, but was reluctant to take it off at any time as if it were a treasure. Now that Aruka said so, they suddenly made up their minds secretly in their hearts. Never lose. When others see their reaction, they know that the so-called practice ring is definitely a good thing. More importantly, it can be recognized by Mr. Aruka. As long as they win, they can prove that they are definitely not worse than them. It's Mr. Aruka, and even their parents will praise them. Thinking about it this way, the gazes of those without a practice ring looking at Naruto and others suddenly became hot. Definitely win. Looking at the firmness in the eyes of everyone in these two groups, Aruka's mouth twitched slightly, revealing a conspiracy-like smile. Chapter 37 The Will. New book is on the list, please recommend. Seeking recommendation. Seeking recommendation. Guicho, every book friend can spend a few seconds every day to vote for the little brother, to help the little brother a vote, I thank you all. In addition, the book friend group, 599,237,898, all friends are welcome to join. I remember I emphasized before that if I think you have no potential, I will just kick it out. Now I want to add some supplements and you will listen to me. Gudong. Everyone swallowed nervously. Although in their eyes Aruka is violent and a ghost teacher who does not change his face on children, this does not mean that they hate Aruka. Most children are eager to be people who agree with them, praised by their elders, and recognized by their teachers can all make their small hearts get great satisfaction, especially in this ninja world. The recognition of powerful people like Aruka has great attraction to them. People who do not have a practice ring in their hands have long regretted that they did not persist in the test that determined Aruka's position. Now they have the opportunity to make up for it. They naturally have to gear their hands. They even regret not practicing well during Aruka's leave. Otherwise, the odds of winning will be even greater. From now on, we will conduct a collective test every month. Only the top 9 are eligible for special training. The others will consciously follow the training courses I have arranged. For the sake of fairness, everyone who has a practice ring must wear a ring. Hearing this, the person without the ring suddenly looked confused, while the person with the ring on his hand was shocked. Ms. Aruka, why is this? Yes, it's impossible to win with a ring, right? Ms. Aruka. Aruka frowned and said coldly, are you so unconfident? Seeing Aruka showed signs of anger, even Naruto didn't dare to complain anymore, and the others calmed down obediently. I think you should feel the benefits that the practice ring brings to your body. Then you should also know that you are definitely better than your peers in terms of physical fitness, strength, and speed. If you are not allowed to wear the practice ring to test, there will be what is fair. Hearing this, Naruto and the others had nothing to say, while the others without the ring looked at the ring in Naruto's hands with enthusiasm. Well, that's all I want to say. Now I am ready to test. Everyone will stand in a row for me. Aruka gave the order loudly, and everyone obediently followed suit. In the queue, the opposition between the two groups of students with rings and students without rings was very obvious. Facing Aruka's direction, starting from the left, followed by Naruto. Hinata waited for 8 people, and then separated by a distance of 1 meter as a student without a ring. After they stood up, Aruka walked forward with his back to them for a distance of 10 meters, and then used a branch to draw a long line on the ground, and then turned to them and said. Because it is the first collective test, the project is relatively simple. You only need to touch this line in the shortest time from where you are. According to the time spent lining up the results, do you understand? That is that simple. Ms. Aruka, it's difficult to test specific results at such a distance, right? Advertisement. Others also looked at Aruka with doubts, only Naruto and others had a clear look. After all, they had experienced Aruka's special training, and knew that Aruka's training was definitely not as simple as it seemed. They were pitted last time. I thought that Aruka would throw the soil kunai one by one, but the result came in pieces, so he must not take his training lightly, otherwise he would be caught like the last time. The whole is extremely miserable. Oh, is it simple? Sure enough, I saw a sneer at the corner of Aruka's mouth, and then suddenly put his hands together, and quickly formed a few marks of the bull's head in the horse's mouth. Twice the gravitational field. Everyone suddenly felt that their bodies had become heavier and fell directly to the ground unpreparedly, but this time the gravity field was obviously much lighter than the last time. They struggled and found that they could still move barely. I don't need to explain, right? Aruka calmly let go of his hand and looked at the crowd, but struggling with twice the gravity, they did not answer Aruka's margin. Seeing no one answered, Aruka shrugged, and then said loudly. So, now the test begins. After saying that, Aruka no longer looks at the students who are struggling to stand up from a distance, walks to the chair prepared in advance, sits down, tilts Erlang's legs, and then takes out a book called, I read the readings of Intimacy in Paradise. After a while, Aruka, who had only read the first page, could no longer look away. His dark face gradually revealed a hint of wretched light. For some reason, his breathing suddenly became heavier and his eyes were full of excitement. The color. Everyone struggled for a while, and found that they could only barely stand up anyway, and couldn't move at all. Looking at the horizontal line that was only 10 meters away, they thought the distance was too short, but now they only feel that the distance is like a moat. Generally, it is impossible to cross at all. After a while, I saw a little boy with a short ponytail in the field suddenly fell on his stomach. He moved forward slowly while he was on all fours and his body was swinging back and forth. When the person next to him saw his movements, he suddenly realized his movement. It turned out that there is no need to stand up. Aruka said that as long as you reach the line, it means that you can use the way to climb over. At this moment, they finally understand that Aruka just said to Hinata that it is impossible to wait for their bodies. It means clean. Rubbing on the ground by crawling over, if the body is clean, there will be a ghost. Thinking of this, everyone immediately leaned down and crawled forward little by little. At this time, the energy gap of each human body can be reflected. Although the 8 people who have undergone a special training are still crawling very slowly, they are gradually widening the gap with others. Even Naruto is better than those. Ordinary students climb fast. You should know that Naruto used to be the tail of a crane. How can they not be surprised to climb in front of them this time? And this also shows from the side how obvious Aruka's special training effect is. Even the Naruto crane tail can become stronger, and they are definitely better than Naruto. At this moment, they were very eager for Aruka's special training, and crawled forward desperately one by one. It seems that they have sensed the fighting spirit of those ordinary students. Naruto and the others are not to be outdone. Their movements of swinging their limbs suddenly become faster, and the little gap between the two groups that has just been narrowed is instantly pulled further. At this moment, Naruto and them are all I don't want to lose, because losing means losing Aruka's approval and kicking out of the 9 places. Especially Naruto, who finally met someone who recognized his existence and finally entered a small group, how could he easily give up? Therefore, even if he died, he had to work hard to keep this rare opportunity. With this belief, Naruto gritted his teeth, forcibly got rid of part of the body's self-protection mechanism, swung his limbs desperately, and gradually climbed to the forefront position after a while. As Aruka said before, it is not only aptitude that determines a person's potential, but more importantly, that unwavering will, and now, that rare will is gradually transformed into Naruto's power. Chapter 38. New book is on the list, please recommend. Seeking recommendation. Seeking recommendation. Guicho, every book friend can spend a few seconds every day to vote for the little brother, to help the little brother a vote, I thank you all. In addition, the book friend group, 599,237,898, all friends are welcome to join. Oh, what an unexpected result. After Aruka recorded the results, he watched with interest Naruto, who was lying on the ground and breathing heavily. The others also completed the test. They all knelt to the side. They didn't even have the strength to stand up, and they were covered in dust. Very embarrassed. Only Naruto had the strength to move his body for a while, and he could only lie on the ground. Not only that, his eyelids were half drooping, and it was obviously hard to open his eyes. The top 8 in this test are Uzumaki Naruto, Inuzuka Toga, Haruno Sakura, Yamanaka Ino, Aburame Shino, Akamichi Choji, Nara Shikamaru, Hyuga Hinata. The 8 of you will continue to conduct special training in the next month. Uchiha Sasuke, who participated in the collective test, assumed that he passed this collective test based on his strength. Are you okay? Hearing that, everyone nodded subconsciously. Sasuke's strength is obvious to all. It is absolutely number 1 in the whole year. If Sasuke is there, Naruto can never be the first, but even so, Naruto won the first place this time. Many people's faces are not pretty. Crane ghosts, who could be crushed casually, are now crawling on their heads. In their opinion, it is exactly the reason why he left the previous quiz and was favored by Aruka. Otherwise, how could they possibly be lost to Naruto? At this time, they were all determined in their hearts to train hard within a month, even if they could not surpass the others, at least they would take Naruto's place. The sense of competition has been completely established inadvertently, but Aruka didn't know this. After the results were announced, they were disbanded, leaving only the top 8 this time. You did a good job, and you did not live up to my expectations of you. Hearing that, the 8 people who were left immediately looked at Aruka as if they had seen a ghost. You know, this is the first time Aruka has praised them since becoming their head teacher. I originally thought that this violent teacher would not tell them anything other than training. He didn't expect him to have a human side. What's wrong? Your eyes are very strange. Is there anything strange about me? No, Mr. Aruka, you think too much. Really? Aruka looked suspiciously at the little Sakura and Ino, whose faces were a little unnatural, then shrugged and said, forget it, don't talk about it. Upon hearing this, Sakura and Ino were relieved, and then they heard Aruka say, leaving you this time is something that needs to be explained to you. What's the matter, Mr. Aruka? It's about Uchiha Sasuke. I thought I should have heard of it when I came to you in the morning. Hearing Aruka's words, everyone was silent for a while. After a while, little Sakura raised his head and asked softly, Ms. Aruka, the Uchiha clan, is it really annihilated? Aruka nodded, recalling the deadly silence of Uchiha Station that he felt in the force field last night, and sighed. Advertisement. Yes, there are only 3 survivors of the Uchiha clan in the village, and the other 2 do not want to face Sasuke for some reason, so he is now alone. Ms. Aruka, do you want us to do something for Sasuke? Well, lonely people are always prone to personality problems. The 9 of you are my optimistic students. I don't want to see any of you go astray, so I hope you can communicate with Sasuke more if you have time. Sasuke is still in the hospital now, so if you are okay later, go see him. With that said, Aruka seemed to remember something suddenly, turned her head, and looked at Naruto who was lying on the ground immobile. Speaking of, this guy Naruto was too aggressive this time, and as a result, his muscles were severely strained. If you don't go to the hospital, you will probably have sequelae. Say, when you visit Sasuke, help me send this stuff in by the way. Hey, so troublesome. Hearing the complaints of Sakura and Ino, Aruka shrugged, and then left with the score sheet. It was dusk when Aruka had left the ninja school. Aruka raised his head and saw that the sky was burning like a flame, covering half of the sky. Under the bloody sunset, the streets were stained with the same color on both sides. Putting his hands in the pants kabuto, Aruka walked slowly towards the exercise field on the edge of the village. He has never had the habit of going home on time. Although Kwanmei is here now, the house is not too deserted, but the loneliness that arises from the depths of his heart is not the reason for a person's life, but that he is not in this world. People who don't have a sense of belonging to this world, even if they can communicate with others normally and can accept Aruka, this brand new life, he cannot fully integrate into this world. There is no way to talk about the so-called sense of belonging. The world has no fetters that belong to him. Therefore, he is still alone until now. This will not change the slightest because of the addition of individuals in his daily life. He is still him. Aruka is still Aruka, and it is the new Aruka that is accepted in this world, not him. Walk through the noisy streets, cross the vermilion wooden bridge, and slowly walk to the inaccessible exercise site as the twilight gradually darkens. Pulling out Kabuto's hand inserted into the pants, Aruka slowly exhaled a sullen breath, then sat down with his back against the wooden stakes in the exercise field, staring directly at the fading sunset in the distant sky. However, his gaze does not have any focal length. Obviously, his attention is not where the line of sight can be reached, but is trapped in gradually heavy thinking. This is the power-respected ninja world, so whether he wants to or not, he will inevitably step on the path of power like the previous life, even if the purpose of pursuing power is different, the direction is the same. Through the previous 3 battles, his shortcomings have been exposed. In terms of superpowers, activating abilities through the blue chakra will cause the sequelae of increasing consumption, and with his current chakra volume, 10 times the gravitational field or 10 times the anti-gravity field can only last for 10 breaths at most, and it is impossible to use it for conventional means of combat. Although controlling the surrounding material with superpowers can greatly reduce the consumption of blue chakra, it also has sequelae problems, and the surrounding force field must be analyzed in advance with the ability to control the material, which will inevitably expose a trace of flaws. It's better to say if the strength gap is large or the enemy doesn't understand their own abilities. If they are similar in strength, then the slightest flaw will be a disaster. The 2 battles with the masked man are completely because the opponent doesn't understand the shortcomings of his abilities to get lucky. Surviving, he will not be so lucky when he analyzes his abilities. As for using abilities to strengthen body functions, it is completely impossible now, because it requires a very strong body. Even if he has decided to use abilities to gradually increase physical strength, it will not be possible in a short period of time. There is basically no need to consider this now. Problem. His main fighting method now is to control the material to achieve the effect of the attack. Hand-to-hand combat is still a shortcoming, a wide range of abilities cannot be used frequently, and the problem of the repulsion of blue and colorless chakra has not been completely resolved. It will inevitably limit his growth. Therefore, he must now find a suitable cultivation method to enhance his strength. Otherwise, when his ability is thoroughly analyzed by the enemy, he will not be as cool as he is now. After all, if you are complacent, you will be eliminated by the entire era sooner or later. Chapter 39. The Third Watch is sent. In addition, the book friend group, 599,237,898, all friends are welcome to join. With the current situation, besides increasing the amount of chakra and strengthening the body, which takes time to accumulate, the only way to increase strength is to develop new combat methods. Most of the original fighting methods relied on nearby materials, most of which were directly controlling soil blocks and rocks. It was too monotonous and easy to be seen through by opponents. The gravity field and anti-gravity field could not be used all the time. It relied on the enhanced ability. Physical skills are even more useless. If you use it, it is estimated that the enemy is not dead, and you will be crippled. Then there is left to choose. Thinking of this, Aruka took out a scroll from the hanging bag on the chest of the ninja vest. There is only ninjutsu. Slowly opened the scroll, which was also one of the few ninjutsu scrolls in the legacy left to him by his predecessor. Great fireball technique, sea-level ninjutsu, sounds like it's awesome, I don't know how powerful it is, let's try it. Aruka spread the scroll and lay it flat on the ground. Then, according to the stamp recorded on it, she moved her hand slowly, and slowly sealed the stamp at an extremely slow speed of 5 seconds per stamp. After finishing the seal, Aruka gathered chakra in his mouth, and then vomited suddenly. Fire style, great fireball technique. The next moment, I saw a small flame suddenly spit out from Aruka's mouth, which was extinguished by the blowing wind not long after. Upon seeing this, Aruka suddenly got a black line. This kind of great fireball is gross, and it is probably very reluctant to use it to light up a cigarette. There is no need to try a second time. Aruka discovered the problem at the moment the surgery was completed. His chakra control is really ridiculously poor. The blue chakra used to cast the spell was spit out to effect the spell after the convergence was completed. The amount of chakra on board is less than 1/20th of the concentration, and it will be a ghost if you can squirt a great fireball. No, chakra control, chakra flow direction control. Aruka suddenly remembered the last time he used his ability to compress the chakra in his body into a chakra ball in order to find out the problem that some of the blue chakra was inexplicably consumed. Since the superpower can control the flow of chakra, why should I use it directly? Mind control chakra flow. Wouldn't it be better to control the effect indirectly through the ability? Although maintaining a certain amount of chakra must be controlled by mind, it is still possible to control the flow direction of chakra and let chakra converge at a certain point in a short time. Anyway, the operation time is very short and does not need to be maintained for too long. Chakra. Thinking of this, Aruka's eyes suddenly lit up. However, just as he was about to experiment, in this space already covered by force field perception, there was a sudden wave of force field that was obviously human. When he sensed the wave carefully, he couldn't help but frown. Sasuke. Why did he come? Aruka had long remembered the fluctuations in the force field of everyone who was connected to him, even Chenku and Uncle Yil, so he recognized Sasuke as soon as he appeared within his range of perception. Although he was wondering what Sasuke was doing here at this time, Aruka put away the scroll and leaned back against the wooden stake to watch the ramp not far away. Not long after, a black-haired boy with dull eyes gradually appeared on the ramp plane, walking aimlessly forward like a walking dead body, and soon he walked in front of Aruka. However, with his eyes out of focus, he didn't even notice Aruka in front of him, and was about to continue walking forward, not knowing where he was going. Aruka put down the right hand that had just been raised to say hello with an awkward expression, and then said helplessly. I said, Sasuke, although I am not a good teacher, I am still your teacher anyway. I was so disregarded by you, I said sadly. Advertisement. Hearing someone calling himself, Sasuke finally recovered and looked at Aruka in front of him with a puzzled look. Ms. Aruka, what are you doing here? I should ask you this, right? Why do you kid wander around at this time? If you didn't meet me, wouldn't you have to wander into the deep mountains and old forests? Hearing that, Sasuke's little face suddenly showed a touch of bitterness. Facing Aruka, he did not maintain the arrogance as usual, but showed the goodness of a child. Teacher, do you know? Mom and Dad are dead, everyone is dead, there will be no one again. Before Sasuke finished speaking, Aruka interrupted directly. What stupid thing are you talking about? Didn't I say it before? As your teacher, I will definitely be responsible for your life. No matter what path you are going to take, I will pave the way for it, and Sasuke's face moved slightly, and he looked at Aruka expectantly. In his pupils gradually appearing in focus, Aruka continued. It's not just me, including Naruto that stinky kid, 9 of you are my most valued students, which means that the 9 of you will surely be companions who will support each other in the future. 8 companions, Sasuke, you ignore them like this. Is it really good? Sasuke was silent, thinking that just now even Naruto, who can only be supported by people, came to visit him, and the 8 people recognized by Aruka just like him, an unspeakable feeling suddenly appeared in Sasuke's heart. Aruka didn't speak, but looked at him quietly. When he was only 7 years old, he experienced great changes in his family. He suddenly became an orphan from the proud of heaven. Even an adult may not be able to bear the huge gap. Now he should be supported by his brother. Is it just resentment towards Uchiha Itachi? Hate can make a person's will become very terrifying, but it is also easy to destroy a person. Aruka said these words not to ask Sasuke to give up hatred, but to plant a seed in him, one that can prevent him in the future seed of no return because of revenge. After a long time, the hole in Sasuke's eyes gradually disappeared, but Aruka couldn't tell whether he had listened to his words. Ms. Aruka, I want to become stronger and stronger than that man. Sasuke looked at Aruka seriously, a pair of dark pupils full of desire for power, which seemed to be mixed with other things, but Aruka really couldn't understand what it was. After hesitating, Aruka finally sighed and said helplessly. I know, then, for the sake of strength, you will have the corresponding consciousness. Sasuke nodded firmly. In any case, I must have the power to kill that man, Mr. Aruka, please. Seeing Sasuke's eyes that are not inferior to Naruto at this time, Aruka suddenly had a headache. Compared with the unyielding will that Naruto has grown up in countless adversities, Sasuke's will, which is obviously supported by hatred, is full of instability. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. But one thing is certain, that is, Sasuke, who is already extremely talented, has the will not to lose to Naruto, and the achievements he can achieve are absolutely unimaginable. It is possible to meet such a student with great potential. It is indeed his luck as a teacher. Well, as you wish, I just need a sparring partner anyway, since you have this kind of consciousness. Aruka slowly stepped aside, kept a certain distance from Sasuke, and then continued. It's better to hit the sun instead of choosing a day. Let me conduct a simple test now and let me see how high your qualifications are. Chapter 40 Utilization. New book is on the list, please recommend. Seeking recommendation. Seeking recommendation. Guicho every book friend can spend a few seconds every day to vote for the little brother, to help the little brother a vote, I thank you all. In addition, the book friend group, 599,237,898, all friends are welcome to join. Take off the practice ring and move your body, wait until you warm up before you start. Sasuke nodded, threw the practice ring aside, and then began to prepare. After all, the practice ring is not exactly the same as carrying a weight. Once it is taken off, the original function of the body can be restored, but the microgravity will continue for a period of time. At the same time, muscle relaxation also takes some time to recover. Taking advantage of Sasuke's physical activity, Aruka wanted to test the idea just now. After remembering the printing, Aruka's knot printing speed was a little faster, but the knot printing speed of 4 seconds still caused Sasuke not far away to be stunned, wondering why Aruka, deliberately, not such a slow printing. But the next moment, Sasuke's eyes suddenly widened. I saw that Aruka took a deep breath after finishing, and then spit out the moment. Fire style, great fireball technique. Boom 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 boom. 2 huge fireballs suddenly formed near Aruka's mouth. The next moment, the fireball rushed forward with a hot wave of fire. The ultra-high temperature left a scorched rut on the ground. In the end, the 2 fireballs were at a distance of 10. The area of more than a few meters suddenly burst, and a large piece of rubble dust was thrown out, and the violent wind pressure made Sasuke, who was 10 meters away, had to lie on the ground to resist so that it would not be blown away. Okay. So strong. Sasuke looked at Aruka, who was motionless after the procedure, with a shocked face. At the same time, he was puzzled. Just now Aruka led him to recognize that it was definitely the most commonly used fire style ninjutsu of the Uchiha clan, the seal of great fireball technique, himself. Yes, but he had never heard of the great fireball technique being able to separate 3 fireballs and even explode. This simply subverted his understanding of this technique. However, what he didn't know was that Aruka's face under the long bangs that had been put down was completely dumbfounded. What the hell is this? The gap between the front and the back is too big, right? Aruka reviewed the situation when using ninjutsu just now. The amount of chakra accumulated did not increase at all. It was just using the ability to control the flow of chakra to the point of surgery, and then directly activate ninjutsu. Unexpectedly, there would be such a weird effect. What is this? Aruka gradually came back to his senses, then frowned and thought deeply. The principle must be understood. After all, no matter what technique is used, there will be corresponding risks. The greater the power of the technique, the greater the risk. He does not want to be baffled by the risks of the technique inexplicably, and if you want to develop a new way of fighting, you must figure out the principles of ninjutsu. According to the knowledge about ninjutsu previously seen in the library, the power of general ninjutsu is proportional to the amount of chakra and chakra control. The same ninjutsu used by different people will have different effects, such as clone technique. Chakra. A person with good control can distinguish several clones, while a person with poor control can't even distinguish one. Then, the clue lies in the amount of chakra used for surgery and the control of chakra. With chakra control, under the control of the force field, every trace of chakra will accurately converge to the designated position, although the dual-use relationship of Ishin cannot last for a long time. Maintain, but it is definitely enough to use ninjutsu. By using abilities to improve chakra's control, he should be no different from others. As for the chakra used for the operation, the amount of chakra used for the procedure. A thought flashed through Aruka's mind. When someone mobilizes chakra to perform the operation, is the amount of chakra actually used for the operation really equal to the amount of chakra mobilized? Advertisement. Thinking of this, a noun gradually emerged in Aruka's mind. Utilization. Yes, if there is any difference between his ability to enhance chakra's control and others directly controlling chakra with the mind, it is that the chakra he controls will never be wasted, and 100% will gather chakra to the designated one. At the same time, all the condensed chakra can be converted into corresponding effects when the operation is performed, but others are not necessarily. Even if the Jonin with good control of chakra can avoid wasting as much as possible when mobilizing chakra, during the operation, since chakra is outside the body, the control will inevitably be reduced, and it will inevitably cause waste and affect the operation. The actual amount of chakra will be less than the amount of condensed chakra. If you think about it this way, it makes sense to be able to use chakra to perform 100% of the spell, change the quantity and cause the qualitative change, and the ninjutsu cast is different from others. Although the ability to control chakra itself is the use of ability, which means that a certain amount of chakra needs to be consumed, it is not worth mentioning and more important than the waste caused by the outrageous control power of directly controlling chakra with the spirit. It is the power of ninjutsu that has made a qualitative leap. Even if you use chakra more than others when performing the operation, it is worth it. After thinking about it carefully, I felt that there should be nothing left out. Aruka suddenly stopped thinking. At this moment, Sasuke's expectant voice suddenly came from the side. Ms. Aruka, what kind of technique is this? Can you teach me? Hearing this, Aruka scratched his head immediately, his face somewhat embarrassed and authentic. This is my unique ninjutsu, which no one else can learn. Sasuke's face showed disappointment, rather unwillingly. Is it the blood succession boundary? Although he didn't understand what the blood succession boundary was, Aruka still didn't understand and nodded. More or less. To be honest, Aruka doesn't want to teach, but can't teach it at all, because the prerequisite for using this technique is to have the superpower of force field control and use the ability to precisely control the flow of chakra. If Sasuke can control the force field, it's not necessary. If he teaches it himself, he will understand it naturally. Seeing that the disappointment on Sasuke's little face gradually deepened, Aruka suddenly had a headache. The child's desire for strength seemed to be stronger than imagined. This is naturally a good thing for him, who has outstanding aptitude, but he is too eager. But it is very likely to get the opposite result. But it's good to know this kind of thing in my heart, and what he said clearly will stimulate this little boy who is carrying a family of revenge missions on his thin shoulders. Don't be disappointed. There are so many ways to become stronger. It's not just to learn strong ninjutsu. The one that suits you is the best. Even if you can learn my skills, you may not be better than that guy. Stronger. Hearing that, the disappointment on Sasuke's face was instantly swept away, looking at Aruka expectantly. Ms. Aruka, is there any way to make me stronger than that man? Hearing this, Aruka's face became stiff. Strictly speaking, he and Itachi only fought each other once. He only had a rough idea of his strength, even though he had only been in this world for 2 days at that time, and what he used to chakra. Basically I don't understand, but he also possesses the SSS level superpower of force field control. Being able to stand in a stalemate with him is enough to show that Uchiha Itachi's strength is extraordinary. Moreover, he couldn't see the opponent's bottom in a match. God knows what Itachi cards are useless, so he can't judge the strength of Itachi at all. Well, probably, but it will take a long time and arduous practice. Aruka gave an ambiguous answer, but the mere half-hearted answer still made Sasuke excited. Chapter 41 Sasuke's Strength. New book is on the list, please recommend. Seeking recommendation. Seeking recommendation. Guecho every book friend can spend a few seconds every day to vote for the little brother, to help the little brother a vote, I thank you all. In addition, the book friend group, 599,237,898, all friends are welcome to join. As the body adjusted to the normal state. After coming to the conclusion that the technique he used was better than others, Aruka was in a good mood and asked Sasuke with a smile. Sasuke nodded. Well, Mr. Aruka, what is the content of this test? It's very simple, Aruka said, secretly mobilizing chakra in his body, and then narrowed the range of force field perception to within 5 meters. As the range of perception shrinks, the accuracy of perception continues to improve. With the current state of force field perception fully open, as long as there is a little bit of wind and grass within a 5-meter radius, it will immediately be reflected in his mind. This is an extension of the application of force field control ability. It is not an offensive application, but a defensive type. With the force field perception fully open, Aruka can move the force field fluctuations caused by his movements regardless of the actions of the opponent. He predicted his actions, but in his previous life, he had already developed an opponent when he was fully aware of his ability, so he didn't pay much attention to the use of this ability. But now it just happens to be used. By the way, being serious with children to such a degree. Isn't that a bit too much? Thinking about this, Aruka hesitated, and finally relaxed some of the accuracy of force field perception, and then said to Sasuke. Sasuke, you just need to meet me next. Hearing this, Sasuke looked at Aruka with a puzzled face. Aruka teacher, what do you mean by encountering? Literally, no matter what method you use, as long as you can touch me with any part of your body, you will be considered a pass. The shorter the time, the higher the score. By the way, your teacher is the least good at physical skills. So your chances are still great. Aruka smiled weirdly. Seeing his smile, Sasuke instinctively felt that it was impossible to be so simple. With the lessons learned from Aruka last time, Sasuke couldn't believe Aruka's topic of training. Without waiting for Sasuke to figure out if there is any deep meaning in Aruka's words, Aruka suddenly said, this training is done within 10 minutes with full marks. If you can get full marks as usual, I will give you some kind of strength as a reward. Hearing the word, power, Sasuke suddenly got a face, and the expression in Aruka's eyes gradually became hot. Remember, if you can't do it within 10 minutes, it will prove that you don't have the qualifications for that power for the time being. Sasuke took a deep breath, then bowed slightly, making a standard posture for the attack. I see, Mr. Aruka, can you start? Aruka nodded, and when he saw it, Sasuke rushed towards Aruka, and when he was about to approach Aruka, he suddenly jumped high, and then slammed into Aruka's doorway. Advertisement. Aruka calmly turned a little sideways and easily avoided Sasuke's kick. When Sasuke was about to fall to the ground, he suddenly put his hands on the ground and opened his legs at the same time. Then he twisted his hands hard, and coordinated with his body. Ability to make a sudden turn of the legs. Oh, very good. Aruka sighed, but his body movements kept moving, and he tried hard at his feet to avoid Sasuke's kick. As Aruka said, he is not good at physical skills, close combat has always been his shortcoming, but this does not mean that he will be killed as long as he is approached. When the position perception is fully opened, the enemy's actions cannot escape. Through his perception, as long as he predicts the enemy's movements, with his body functions that he can instantly strengthen with his abilities at any time, it is too simple to avoid it. Moreover, as the owner of force field control, it is very difficult to get close to him. Even if he is approached, he can quickly open the distance with his ability. Therefore, he wants to defeat him by close hand-to-hand combat. Aruka, only with a speed attack that he can perceive and cannot avoid, and there are very few people who can do it, at least he is a strong Hokage level. But this is just a test, not really against the enemy, so Aruka does not intend to secretly use abilities to strengthen the body's functions, and even the force field perception is not fully activated. It just maintains a level that can predict Sasuke's movements. In this way, Sasuke's 2 consecutive attacks still couldn't even reach Aruka's Kakuzu. Sasuke's momentum has been exhausted. After landing her feet on the ground, she gathered chakra under her feet, and then kicked a small hole under her feet. Taking advantage of this new momentum, Sasuke quickly approached Aruka while quickly exiting. Fist. Drink. The fist fell like raindrops towards Aruka. To the extent of a child, the speed of punching as fast as the appearance of fist shadows is already extremely good. In fact, he couldn't do it before Aruka became his head teacher. To this extent, it has been more than a week since he received the practice ring given to him by Aruka. His strength, speed, and reaction have all been upgraded to a notch. With his aptitude, he can barely make punches so fast. It's a pity that it's still not so fast that Aruka can't react. I saw Aruka retreating quickly while swinging his body constantly. No matter how fast Sasuke's punches were, he couldn't get a punch and was always avoided by a few cents. Obviously Sasuke was just doing useless work, but the strange thing was that the corners of his mouth gradually aroused as Aruka backed away, and at the same time accelerated the speed of approach. He did not intend to stop this almost futile attack and reorganize another attack method. Aruka soon discovered that Sasuke's expression was not right. Not only did he not feel anxious, but he also had the expectation that a certain goal would be achieved. After slightly expanding the perception distance, after sensing the fluctuations in the surrounding force field, Aruka suddenly found some interesting things. I have to say, Sasuke, you are really good. After avoiding Sasuke's fist effortlessly, Aruka suddenly said to Sasuke with admiration. Hearing that, Sasuke's face not only didn't have the slightest joy, but his face sank. Has it been discovered? As if confirming Sasuke's thoughts, Aruka suddenly pressed his feet and suddenly turned around, instantly getting rid of Sasuke's fist, and then turned back several times in a row, completely distanced from Sasuke. Aruka just stood still, and a rustling sound suddenly sounded not far from where he was standing before. When the clouds gradually dispersed and the bright moonlight shone on the ground, only a few forests gradually reflected on the grass. The light of cold, and the side connecting the ends of the rays of light, there are 6 kunai reflecting the moonlight, and the end of the other side is connected in the heart of Sasuke's right hand. When I rushed over and kicked, did the trap that I set up in a blind spot stuck in my sight? You almost succeeded. Aruka looked with interest at Sasuke, who was out of breath due to continuous attacks and severe physical exertion. His eyes were full of admiration. If he hadn't found something wrong just now, he would really have a chance to get caught. He was only 7 years old. Being able to achieve this level is indeed qualified to be boasted by him. Chapter 42. Sorry, my head is dizzy, I forgot to post, the late 3 shift will be delivered. Snapped. Aruka raised his hand to block Sasuke's weak fist, and said softly, let's come here today. I finally met Aruka, but it was completely meaningless. 20 minutes had passed from the beginning to the present. In the end, Aruka took the initiative, otherwise Sasuke would not even be able to touch his clothes, Kakuzu. Although he was very unwilling, Sasuke didn't even have the strength to walk now. When Aruka announced the end, Sasuke sat down, leaning on the wooden stakes in the exercise field, raised his head, and looked at the lonely cold moon in the sky. Lost. Ms. Aruka, am I weak? If you let Naruto hear this, but you have to fight you desperately, if even you feel weak, shouldn't Naruto commit suicide? Aruka sat down next to Sasuke and stretched out comfortably. Her dark face is full of relaxed and comfortable life. She can live the way she likes, without having to go through the blood and blood like her previous life. Aruka can't help but feel that maybe it was a lucky thing to be killed by that guy and reborn into this world. Speaking of Naruto, Sasuke's face suddenly became a little complicated. Ms. Aruka, why do you care about Naruto so much? I don't really care about it. Aruka shook his head, and said with a chuckle, Naruto guy has a very special temperament that makes people who understand him want to stand next to him involuntarily. Specifically, it is be attracted by the spirit of never giving up in the face of adversity. The spirit of never giving up. Sasuke groaned. His expression became more complicated, remembering that it used to be the tail of a crane, but he kept looking for his own fault. No matter how many times he lost, he never gave up Naruto. Suddenly, he was a little touched by Aruka's words. Yes, the spirit of never giving up, which is why he can compare with you. Although all 9 of you are students I value, but if you want to talk about the people who value most, it is only you and Naruto. Speaking of this, Aruka's face suddenly showed a touch of reminiscence, and continued in a tone as if talking to himself. As a teacher like me, my favorite thing to do is to be able to teach myself a proud student. Yes, Sasuke responded, his eyes suddenly blurred, and he didn't know what was thinking in his little head. The atmosphere became a little dull for a while. After a while, Aruka stood up suddenly, then turned his back to Sasuke and said, "It's late, let's go back." Sasuke nodded. After this period of rest, he has recovered a bit of physical strength. After putting on the practice ring, he followed Aruka behind, and the two left the exercise field together. On the way, Sasuke raised his head from time to time and looked at Aruka, who had a relaxed and comfortable look on his dark face. When Aruka looked over, he hurriedly looked away, but his small face still had an expression of hesitation. "What's wrong? Do you have any questions for me?" Sasuke nodded, hesitated, and then hesitated. "Ms. Aruka, can you tell me, what is the power that can be given to me as a reward?" Although he did not complete the training and was not eligible for the reward that Aruka had promised, Sasuke still couldn't bear his curiosity and asked it out. "Oh, that." In Sasuke's nervous gaze, Aruka said casually, "It's nothing, it's just something that will be handed over to you sooner or later. As long as your strength reaches the standard I set, I will naturally help you open that thing." Upon hearing this, Sasuke was stunned. It seems that there is no difference between not saying it, right? Advertisement. Well, you will know sooner or later, don't worry, but I can tell you clearly, that's something that is definitely worth looking forward to, and even something that can make you fight against that guy. So, what you have to do now is to improve yourself. If you reach that standard earlier, I will be able to deliver that thing to you sooner. Hearing this, Sasuke knew that no matter how much he asked, he couldn't ask anything, so he nodded disappointedly. The two quickly returned to the village. Aruka's home was in the opposite direction to the Uchiha clan, so Sasuke was about to say goodbye to Aruka as soon as he arrived at the fork in the village. However, at this moment, Aruka suddenly stopped Sasuke. In Sasuke's puzzled gaze, Aruka suddenly sighed and said in a low tone. "Sasuke, I know that you are desperate for power for revenge, and I know that this is the hatred you have to bear, so I will not persuade you to give up revenge, and I will even help you become stronger as I said before. As your teacher, no matter what path you are going to take, I will try my best to provide convenience for that path." Hearing this, Sasuke immediately looked at Aruka gratefully, and was about to say something, but was interrupted by Aruka waved his hand. "I told you this because I hope you can promise me one thing." "What's the matter, Mr. Aruka? As long as I can do it, I will definitely not refuse." Sasuke looked at Aruka with a serious face. The deep reason is that he can feel Aruka's impeccable kindness towards him. "Promise me not to let hatred completely occupy your life, let alone give up what is truly precious to you because of hatred." Hearing this, Sasuke's face suddenly stiffened, and a painful struggle gradually appeared on his face. For him now, revenge for the brother who destroyed the Uchiha clan is the most important thing in life. For this reason, he can even give his life. As long as he can get revenge, there is nothing he cannot give up, but Aruka is full of kindness. Words, he really couldn't say the words to refuse, and he was embarrassed for a while, and he didn't know how to respond to Aruka's kindness. Upon seeing this, Aruka couldn't help sighing. "Forget it, Sasuke, you don't need to answer me now, you just need to keep my words in mind. When you encounter choices in the future, remember what I said, how to choose, you decide for yourself." Sasuke breathed a sigh of relief, and then said in a complex tone, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Aruka, and thank you." After speaking, Sasuke turned and left, seeming to be afraid that Aruka would say something embarrassing for him. Aruka shrugged, then put his hands in the pants kabuto, his face returned to his former relaxed and comfortable expression, and walked slowly towards the street leading home. When he returned to the door and took out the key to open the door, Aruka suddenly found that the door was unlocked. While in doubt, he heard a soft voice from a young girl suddenly coming from the entrance. "Is it Mr. Aruka?" As soon as the voice fell, there was a sound of da footsteps inside. At this moment, Aruka finally remembered that he had agreed to Uchiha Zanyu to take care of Uchiha Izumi for a period of time, and then directly responded, "Well, it's me." After a response, Aruka directly turned on the light in the hallway, and then saw Quan Mi, who was wearing a house suit, walk out. "Welcome back, Mrs. Aruka." Hearing that, Aruka could not help but twitch the corners of his mouth for some reason. Before Aruka came back to her senses, she heard Izumi continue to say, "You haven't eaten yet, do you want to take a shower or eat first?" Or. Aruka decisively interrupted Izumi's daily quotations from his wife, whose culture was very similar to that of a certain country in the previous life. At the same time, he threw away the chaotic thoughts in his mind, and then said in as calm a tone as possible, "You go in first and let me calm down." Hearing this, Kwani gave him a bewildered look, but she was still obedient and turned back to the living room without asking any questions. Chapter 43. New book is on the list, please recommend. Seeking recommendation. Seeking recommendation. Guicho, every book friend can spend a few seconds every day to vote for the little brother, to help the little brother a vote. I thank you all. In addition, the book friend group, 599,237,898, all friends are welcome to join. Dot 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 dot. There was no word for a night, and early the next morning, Aruka didn't struggle to get up for hours like he was sealed by the bed as usual, but got up when it was dark. However, Aruka did not wash up immediately, because he could vaguely hear a slight noise outside the door. I thought Izumi had already got up and was making breakfast or something. Aruka planned to wait for her to go out before she went out. Anyway, as Chunin, she would definitely go out to pick up her tasks. Unlike him, as a teacher, as long as there is no class, they are basically idle. To be honest, Aruka doesn't want to face Izumi now. Being unfamiliar with each other is one aspect, and not being used to living together is also one aspect. The most important thing is that Aruka can vaguely feel Izumi's attitude towards him as strange. Of course, absolutely not. Like admiration, although he doesn't understand that very well, he is very sensitive to a certain look in his eyes, that is, confused. Yes, Aruka can see the confusion hidden in her pair of big eyes no matter how Izumi conceals it. He doesn't know what Izumi is confused about, but he can feel that she is now evading something through that inexplicable attitude. A fact, and he is the medium that can make her temporarily escape from reality. Thinking back to last night, waiting for him to come back to eat together, put the bathwater in advance, clean up the room, and make the bed quilt. It was meticulous care, but Aruka could feel an extremely strong violation from it. That tenderness is not for him. Of course, he doesn't need any tenderness. Although his character doesn't care about many things, he only hates false things. And now Uchiha Izumi is undoubtedly a false existence that he is escaping from wearing a gentle mask, and an existence he hates. Therefore, Aruka does not want to face the current Uchiha Izumi. However, Aruka would not drive her away directly. After all, Aruka hates false things, not Uchiha Izumi, and he probably knows that Izumi has become the way he is now. The biggest possibility is the impact of Uchiha's extermination. There must be something in it that she didn't want to face, that would make her want to escape reality through him. People are likely to change their personality after being greatly stimulated. That is to say, she has become a problem girl now. Therefore, when thinking about the attitude to face her, Aruka feels that she should be treated for a while. It is better to stay away. After stretching out with his arms outstretched, Aruka walked to the desk aside, picked up a pen, and started writing on a blank form. Anyway, I'm still idle now, just to help ordinary students who don't have a practice ring develop the following training plan. Although he received the elite education of the survival of the fittest in his previous life, he is not very optimistic about the students with poor willpower and aptitude, but since they have entered the ninja school, if there is no surprise in the future, they will definitely become a ninja, and ninja is like this. In the high-risk profession, people without strength will only become the bottom stone of others, and because of this, he will think that they are not the best choice as ninjas, but this is obviously impossible. Moreover, even if they don't want to admit that they are their teachers, they will definitely have a place in their lives, so Aruka has to prepare for them, even if they can't reach the level of those 9 students, nor can they be killed in seconds on the battlefield. Through yesterday's observation, Aruka has determined that ordinary students in Naruto already have a very strong sense of competition. This is what he did deliberately. Otherwise, he would not set up a system of collective testing once a month. After all, there is a competitive talent. There will be progress, not only for the 9 valued students, but also for the ordinary students. Next, they only need to arrange their self-training projects, and come over at an appropriate time for a little encouragement. As long as they still have the idea of not accepting defeat and don't need him to supervise them, they will consciously train without conscious affirmation. It's all the mud that can't support the wall, and he really can't help such students. After arranging the 1-month self-training schedule for an hour, Aruka moved his body a little stiff because of sitting for a long time. At this moment, Izumi's gentle voice suddenly came from outside the door. Ms. Aruka, are you awake? Advertisement. Aruka's face suddenly stiffened, and then stopped the movement in his hands, trying not to make a sound. After a while, it seemed that Aruka was not awake yet, and the door gradually calmed down. I used the force field to perceive the situation of the room, and after confirming that Izumi had gone out, Aruka was relieved immediately, took care of it casually, and took care of it to the extent that it was not too ugly, and then walked out of the room. After washing and walking into the living room, Aruka smelled the scent of food, turned his head and looked over, and found a plate of delicate thick egg yaki on the table with a note next to it. Upon seeing this, Aruka's expression couldn't help but be a little complicated. He didn't even need to read it to know what was written on it. After a long time, Aruka sighed suddenly. Uchiha's genocide caused Konoha's overall strength to decline severely, and at the same time left indelible trauma to the survivors. Uchiha Sasuke had to bear the hatred, and Uchiha Schwanyu estimated that it was also involved in this matter. Running, the last Uchiha Izumi stayed in Konoha, and seemed to have recovered, but in fact the inner trauma was definitely not worse than the other two. Otherwise, how could she be so gentle to a stranger who had just met a few days ago? This is totally unreasonable. Even if it is temporarily sent under the fence, it is impossible to feel strange at all, right? Shaking his head, Aruka threw away the chaotic thoughts, went back to the room after breakfast, picked up the lesson plan, and left the house. Comma 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 comma. Here is a small seaside country called Linjiguo located in the buffer zone between the Fire Country and the Thunder Country. Because it is located by the sea and rich in materials, it will basically not be affected even if there is a war between big countries. Therefore, it has always been in a relatively peaceful era. People's lives are relatively rich. Although Shinobu has it is because the country does not need a strong one. Armed force, so most of them are ninjas who are inferior in strength. The weather on the seashore is relatively more complicated than that in the inland. It is often calm the moment before, and the next moment there will be violent storms, lightning and thunder. Today, the weather changes seem to be more bizarre than in the past. The time is now in the morning, when the fishermen were preparing their tools, but when they saw the thick black clouds in the sky, they suddenly gave up the idea of fishing in the sea, but they did not withdraw their sight of looking up at the sky. I saw several blood-red lightning flashes from time to time in the sky full of dark clouds, and at the same time a huge roar resounded across the earth. Amidst the deafening roar, there seemed to be some other sounds mixed in, but they did not pay attention. What really caught their attention was the dozens of trembling dark purple oval lights that appeared in the thick dark clouds. Boom 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 boom. Suddenly there was a roar that was far more terrifying than before. The fishermen who were still looking up at the sky suddenly screamed and squatted down, covering their ears. Not long after, the gap between their hands covering their ears flowed slowly. Bright red blood came out. Not only that, but bloodline gradually leaked out of their eyes, nostrils, and mouth corners under the uninterrupted loud noise. When their faces were covered with bloodline, they finally lay completely on the ground, unable to move anymore. This is not just a phenomenon on the beach. I don't know when, the entire country of prosperity was completely shrouded in this dark sky. The country that was originally prosperous is deadly silent at this moment, and there is no sign of life. Even small animals like snakes, insects, rats and ants all died in this sudden loud noise, not to mention people. When everything on the earth calmed down, a beam of extremely strong light suddenly flew out of the black clouds covering the land, and it fell to the ground at an extremely fast speed. Suddenly, the entire land was completely lifted up and burst out at the same time. There was a burst of extremely strong light. In the dazzling light, countless small dark green substances surged toward the surroundings, and finally fell on the corpse that had completely lost all signs of life. Kaka kaka. When the sky gradually returned to its original calm, only the disgusting sound of swallowing remained on the land. Chapter 44. New book is on the list, please recommend. Seeking recommendation. Seeking recommendation. Guicho, every book friend can spend a few seconds every day to vote for the little brother, to help the little brother a vote. I thank you all. In addition, the book friend group, 599,237,898, all friends are welcome to join. Wow, what's the matter? Hey, Naruto, go away quickly, you have crushed me. Damn it, it hurts, what happened suddenly? Have there been an earthquake? Sasuke-kun, I'm so scared, give me a hug. Go away, Ino pig. Quote. On the way to the training site, a mess of noise suddenly sounded behind Aruka. Naruto and the others were seen lying on the ground. The only one standing was Sasuke, but his face was not as calm as before. Sasuke broke free of the hands of Sakura and Ino, who took the opportunity to ring, and walked to Aruka's side. Aruka-sensei, was that just now? Just now, the earth trembled suddenly and lasted for about 3 breaths. Naruto and others fell directly to the ground unpreparedly. Sasuke subconsciously thought that some powerful enemy had activated a certain power in order to invade the village. Powerful ninjutsu. After all, Konoha has never heard of any earthquake since he founded the village. I have a bad premonition. Well, but don't worry, it's not the enemy invading the village. If the enemy invades, he has the power to make the whole earth tremble, and he can attack the village directly. How can he not even feel a ghost shadow? Sasuke nodded, and at this moment, the others behind him stood up a little embarrassed. When Naruto saw that Sasuke was like a okay person, he compared himself with himself, who was dirty because of the fall, and said, I wouldn't have fallen if Choji hadn't stood still and hit me just now. Naruto, it was you who were so panicked just now that you hit me and everyone fell together. Honest child Choji looked at Naruto with a confused look, and Shikamaru on the side echoed, yes, Naruto, don't quibble, it's clearly your fault. I also noticed. Hey, although I didn't see it, Akamaru can see clearly. You. After being refuted by everyone, Naruto's face flushed, but he really couldn't refute it. It was originally the angry words he said bravely. It was indeed his fault just now, but even so, he didn't intend to be soft, but snorted softly. With a sound, he glanced to the side. Is this the only guy Aruka teacher said can be comparable to me? Sasuke glanced at Naruto with complicated eyes, and couldn't help but wonder if Aruka had missed his eyes. Aruka, who was thinking about the white-haired dog lying on his teeth, was called Akamaru. Seeing Naruto's face flushed after being exposed, he immediately smiled, and his mood was inexplicably lightened. Okay, no need to make a noise. Compared with such trivial things, you still think about how to deal with the training that will be carried out in the future. Friendly reminder, the next training will not be as simple and difficult as last time. It will increase a lot accordingly. You'd better be mentally prepared. It was that simple last time. Simple. Even Sasuke couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. The others looked at Aruka with a ghostly expression. Except for Hinata last time, they had a collective win. Naruto, the most serious one, took leave and was hospitalized. They couldn't even come to school, and they were not much better. It took a whole week to slowly recover their bodies. For them, the last training was simply hell. Advertisement. So what is the harder training than hell? I shudder when I think about it. But it should be said that they are indeed the two most valued students of Aruka. Sasuke's face only changed slightly, and then he was full of expectation. For him, as long as he can become stronger, no matter what the price is, it is worth it. After Naruto, who was injured most badly last time, recovered, not only did he not have the slightest shadow on Aruka's training, but he became even more looking forward to it. Come here, Mr. Aruka, no matter how difficult the training is, I will finish it for you. Hearing this, Aruka immediately glanced at Naruto with admiration. Very good, this is the momentum, I hope you can do what you say, don't let me down. HMPH, I must do what I say, this is my forbearance, you just keep your eyes open and watch it. Sasuke seemed to suddenly understand why Aruka values Naruto so much. Just standing aside, he was still worried about Aruka's training. Now he completely put aside the trace of negative emotions. The spirit of never admitting defeat can indeed infect his surroundings. People. When he turned his head and looked around, Sasuke found that even the others looked at ease. With this alone, Sasuke believed that he had always been number one in the class and couldn't do it. Naruto does have something he doesn't have on his body, which means that, as Aruka said, Naruto is indeed qualified to be compared with him. With complicated thoughts, Sasuke and the others unconsciously came to a big rift valley with a big waterfall next to it. Okay, here it is. Everyone looked at Aruka with bewildered faces. Shikamaru directly said, Mr. Aruka, what are we training here? Not here, but below here. As he said, Aruka pointed to the end of the road not far away, and everyone walked in the direction he was pointing. However, when they saw the scene below, they couldn't help but breathe in air. I saw under the Great Rift Valley, both sides are full of huge rocks protruding, which makes the scalp numb at a glance, and the bottom is dark, completely unable to see the terrain below, just look at it. The endless darkness underneath made people involuntarily move back, and didn't dare to move forward at all. Ms. Aruka, training below here means. Literally, well, stop talking nonsense, come down with me. With that said, Aruka ignored the surprise on everyone's faces and jumped straight over them. Ah, Mr. Aruka, little Sakura and Ino exclaimed, but Naruto and Sasuke walked to the edge of the rift and looked down, but apart from the endless darkness, Aruka had no hair. Suddenly, his pupils shrank, and two small faces were at the same time. There was a look of worry. In fact, Naruto and Sasuke are now almost in the same position. Naruto has been alone since the beginning, and Sasuke is now alone after experiencing the Uchiha genocide. In the village, Aruka is the only one who really cares. One of their people, they naturally couldn't care less about Aruka. Don't worry, don't forget that Mr. Aruka is a ninja who can walk in the air. With his strength, nothing can happen. Rather than caring about this, it's better to be mentally prepared now. Shikamaru seldom said calmly. Upon hearing this, Sasuke and Naruto regained their senses. They remembered Aruka's powerful strength. Among other things, the ability to walk in the sky and definitely land on the ground was at the same time. Relieved. Huh, Shikamaru, what do you mean by being mentally prepared? Does this still need to be asked? Of course I am prepared to jump down together. Didn't you hear what Mr. Aruka said just now? We all have to jump down with him. No, isn't it? Jumping or something? How could it be? Little Sakura said tremblingly, except for Sasuke and Naruto, everyone else had almost the same reaction as her. This can't be blamed on their timidity, but people's instinctive response to the crisis. Among other things, just looking at the bottomless darkness below makes me frightened, let alone jumping down, even if I know that I will definitely not die, it is difficult to overcome the hurdle in my heart. And this is also the first ring of Aruka's training this time. Only those who overcome the instinctive fear in their hearts have the courage to jump off. As long as they overcome the fear in their hearts, their psychological endurance will be greatly improved, and the following training must have a strong psychological endurance. If they can't even do this, then the following training is unnecessary. Chapter 45. New book is on the list, please recommend. Seeking recommendation. Seeking recommendation. Guicho, every book friend can spend a few seconds every day to vote for the little brother, to help the little brother a vote, I thank you all. Vomit. Naruto, Shikamaru and other 5 boys leaned on the smooth stone wall with one hand and kept vomiting. They all vomited up at breakfast. When there was really nothing to vomit in their stomachs, they even vomited out the green gastric juice. Fortunately, they didn't eat lunch, but brought their lunch, otherwise they would not be able to train with their empty stomach. Hinata, who came down with them, is in much better condition. I don't know how she did it. Naruto and the others vomited madly after they fell, and she just gently took the handkerchief out and covered her mouth and let out a sigh of foul air. Then the shit is gone. Looking at the embarrassed Naruto and the 5 boys and the white-haired puppy lying on the ground who knew nothing about life or death, Aruka couldn't help covering his forehead, and said helplessly, I said you can't just jump down normally. Do you circle around in midair? What the hell? When did I let you perform acrobatics? You are really talented, and you can jump out of a cliff with such awesome tricks. Is it fun? Aruka doesn't know what happened on the edge of the cliff just now. Of course, jumping off normally is the same as Sasuke, Sakura and Ino, except for a little fright. But Naruto and the others stumbled and fell off, and their body was not balanced at all. In any case, he just rolled his body and rolled down. They have been spinning in midair for at least 10 seconds, and it is already very good that they can still maintain consciousness. Hearing Aruka's words, Naruto and the others hadn't reacted, but Ino's face became unnatural, and the little Sakura who knew the insider covered her mouth and chuckled, but Sasuke's face was a little impatient. Naruto and the others are obviously unable to train immediately. They must be relieved. They don't know what training is this time. Can they train alone like the last time? If not, then he will have to waste time waiting. Damn it, Ino, this guy, and Naruto. You two hurt me miserably, vomit. Remember, it doesn't matter to me, I am also a victim. Yep. Hearing this resentful voice, Aruka looked at Ino in confusion. It would be normal if Naruto had a moth, but how could a girl in Ino make them so miserable? Looking at Aruka's suspicious gaze, Ino scratched his head in embarrassment, and turned his head in embarrassment. Upon seeing this, Aruka probably knew what was going on, and she shrugged and said casually, well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, the waiting training is the same as the last time in a group of 2 people, and they have to line up to start. Sasuke happens to be a group of people. Little Sakura and Ino are a group. When it's your turn, I guess you will almost recover. Hearing this, Sasuke breathed a sigh of relief, and then said, Ms. Aruka, let me start first. Seeing Sasuke looking eager to try, Aruka shook his head. Don't worry, the preparations are not done yet. As he said, Aruka suddenly stepped aside, then put one hand on the smooth stone wall next to him, and then a light blue chakra light curtain suddenly appeared on his body, and he finally snorted. Chaos space. Boom boom boom. Following Aruka's actions, there was a sudden frequent sound in the rock wall he touched. Hearing this sound like a rock wall collapsed, everyone was shocked, and subconsciously looked around to prevent being suddenly dropped somewhere. The falling rocks hit. Advertisement. However, what is strange is that in this rather narrow rift valley, apart from the slight tremor caused by the sound, there is no movement at all, and there is no shadow of falling rocks or anything, and it is strangely calm. The so-called chaotic space is an extension of the ability to control the force field. It destroys the stable structure inside the large volume of matter that it touches and makes it completely in an unstable state of chaos, while maintaining the surface without any changes. The main purpose of this ability extension, it is convenient to analyze the internal structure of a large area of matter. After all, it is difficult to directly analyze the material force field that is completely in a steady state. As long as there are obvious force field fluctuations, it is much easier. Moreover, the time spent in chaotic space is directly related to the size and complexity of the target. The larger or more complex the material, the longer it will take. Therefore, this ability cannot be used directly in combat. The next thing to do is to control the force field of all the matter in the stone wall as accurately as possible. Specifically, it must be at least accurate to control the size of a square centimeter, instead of just picking a stone from the ground as before. Or the soil blocks come out for manipulation, so a visible field of sight must appear inside the stone wall. Ms. Aruka, this is. Little Sakura subconsciously wanted to ask Aruka what was going on, but was interrupted impatiently by Sasuke. Don't bother Mr. Aruka, his power is not what we can understand now, let me watch him quietly. Seeing by Sasuke's impatient eyes, Sakura only felt wrong for a while, but Sasuke was right to tell Sakura not to disturb Aruka, because now Aruka must maintain the perception of the force field while constantly destroying the internal structure of the rock wall, and exerting the force field. Controlling and maintaining external stability, Ishin's 3 uses, even he can't bear it. After about 5 minutes, Aruka finally stopped his movements, and a look of exhaustion flashed across her dark scar face. Although the chakra used to control the material directly in contact is much less than the chakra used to control the air, his current amount of chakra is quite abundant, but the main consumption of the use of force field perception is the spirit. It's weird to be tired. But now is not the time to rest. After breathing a little, Aruka pressed his hands on the stone wall this time, activating his abilities while infiltrating his positional perception to the utmost extent. Force field control. Click, click, click. There was a burst of mechanical noise in the stone wall, and the movement this time was obviously much larger than when using the chaotic space before, and everyone could feel the violent shaking from the ground. However, this shaking still did not cause a collapse, no matter how much the stone walls on both sides shook, no rock fell. Obviously, while controlling the inside of the rock wall, Aruka is also using the ability to maintain the stability of the surroundings, which allows them to stand safe and sound in the big rift valley full of jagged rocks on both sides. However, the violent vibration still caused the 3 girls present to be uneasy. It was only because of the lesson that Sakura was drunk by Sasuke just now, Ino was calm, and Hinata quietly ran until his face was sallow from long-term vomiting. Next to Naruto, she seemed to be at ease only by standing next to Naruto. After about 10 minutes, the surrounding area finally calmed down, but at this time Aruka's face was covered with fine sweat. When finishing the last process, Aruka finally put down his hand on the stone wall, rubbed his face with his arm casually, and then suddenly folded his hands together, and a trace of blue chakra swept across his fingertips. With Aruka's actions, a huge crack suddenly appeared on the originally flat stone wall. The next moment, centered on the crack, the surface of the stone wall suddenly began to crack. Not long after, with a huge sound, the stone wall collapsed, and then an extremely dark corridor appeared in front of everyone. Seeing the tunnel, a thought suddenly came to Sasuke's mind. Could it be that, what Mr. Aruka did just now was to completely change the structure inside the rock wall and turn it into a training ground? Thinking of this, Sasuke's eyes on Aruka suddenly became even more intense. You must know that if it is what he thinks, then Aruka's power is so powerful that it is unimaginable. Let alone how far he can transform it, just the ability to move mountains and seas is not his. My elder brother Uchiha Itachi can compare. It is a great blessing to be able to meet such a powerful teacher. As long as he can complete his training, even if he wants to avenge that man, it is no longer indefinitely, right? Chapter 46 Chaotic Space. This is really a big project. Aruka exhaled a suffocating breath. It was hard to hide the exhaustion on his face. Using force field control, chaotic space, and force field perception at the same time for a long time, the consumption of chakra does not matter, but the energy consumed by high concentration is too terrifying. Although he had already printed the design of the training ground in his mind last night, even if he had a detailed plan in his mind, the energy spent in actual operation made him almost tired. After all, that is an internal transformation of thousands of square meters. Ms. Aruka, are you okay? Aruka waved his hand and signaled that he was okay, except that he was a little tired, and there was nothing else, and he would be able to recover after a while. Ms. Aruka, what's inside? Little Sakura couldn't help but curiosity and asked Aruka. The training field, as the name implies, is where you will train next. I have set up a total of 20 training projects in it. Each project or team, or single person, can only proceed to the next project after completing one project. When you complete all the projects, it proves that your physical fitness has reached a certain standard. At that time, I will give each of you a special strength. After speaking, Aruka suddenly sat down on the ground and continued. You don't have to ask what power it is, and I won't say if you ask, you only need to complete the training step by step. Aruka's words made Sakura and Ino, who were about to continue to ask questions, had to swallow them back. Hinata was very well behaved and didn't ask anything, and because Sasuke knew in advance, he was only interested in the next training. Then let's go in now. A look of expectation flashed across Sasuke's stern face, but Aruka didn't mean to stand up. It's no different from going in now and looking for death. You have to wait at least half an hour. Why? I have to ask. There is no oxygen in it now. Can you, a normal person, live without oxygen? When Aruka was angry, Sakura and Ino became even more confused and asked subconsciously. Oxygen. What is that? Hearing this, Aruka immediately covered his forehead. After a long time, he said helplessly in the eyes of a few people, air's what you breathe. Okay, don't ask about it anymore. In short, you can't go in now, you have to wait inside. You can only get in when it's fully ventilated. Wait for me until then. At the end of the day, everyone can hear the impatience in his tone, which reminds the little Sakura and Ino that Aruka still bears the name of a violent ghost teacher. If he is offended, the ghost knows what he will do. Things come. Hokage office. Then, I beg you. Third generation shook the pipe beside his mouth and solemnly said to the three Anbus who were kneeling in front of the desk. Yes. The three Anbu wearing masks of various colors responded. The next moment, the three suddenly turned into a cloud of white smoke, and their figures completely disappeared in the cloud of white fog. After they left, third generation put down the files in their hands, stood up slowly, walked to the window, and looked down through the window sill. The ninjas wearing Konoha vests are trying to maintain order, but the originally neat and orderly buildings around the streets are in a mess at this time. And all this is because of a sudden earthquake. Fortunately, the earthquake was not particularly strong. Some older buildings collapsed, and the losses were not great. The casualties should also be low. After all, although most villagers are just ordinary people, there will always be ninjas living nearby. Now, there is no need to worry about the safety of ordinary villagers. At this time, third generation is not thinking about the loss of the village, but what is going on in this sudden earthquake. If it is a natural phenomenon, it would be nice to say, but third generation always feels that it is not that simple, so he will send Anbu to find the source according to the direction of the wave propagation and investigate the situation clearly. Advertisement. There is always an ominous premonition, I hope it is my illusion. After a long time, an old sigh suddenly sounded in Hokage's office. In fact, it is not only the country of fire that was affected by the earthquake. Starting from the country of neighboring, the country of fire, the country of Taki, the country of field, the country of frost, and the country of thunder have all suffered different degrees of disasters. The country of Linji, which was at the center of the disaster, was immediately extinct, and all humans and animals were not spared from fleas. Except for the country of Linji, the country of frost, the country of Taki, and the country of Taki were the most affected. Almost all the buildings in the village collapsed, and ordinary villagers the casualties were heavy, and with the number of ninjas in their village, there was no way to investigate the cause of the earthquake. Like the third Hokage in the fire country, Hokage also sent a team to investigate the source of the fluctuations. Although the earth country has almost no loss due to its relatively long distance, Tsuchikage is very interested in the earthquake and sent it. Investigate the troops. There are some forces hidden in the dark that make the same actions as the land, such as Orochimaru, Sasori, go and investigate. In a dim space, a group of figures are extremely vague, only the eyes are particularly obvious, and even the voices are trembling. A pupil with several circular patterns like annual rings, the man with lavender pupils suddenly said. His voice is very special, like a mechanical sound without a trace of emotional fluctuations. It is not like the timbre of a living person's speech at all. Although the two people who were spotted were only three-dimensional images, they could see that one of them had a rickety figure with a long and narrow tail behind, while the other was quite tall, with clearly visible eyes exuding the light of the cold. Completely, it's not like human eyes. HMPH, we have to act with this stinky snake again. I also feel uncomfortable working with this guy. Boss, shouldn't you consider changing me a partner? I agree with this stinky snake. A team of two must be in harmony. Others watched the quarrel between the two coldly. Only the man who started talking stood up and said coldly. This time you two will act together, and we will talk about other things later. After speaking, his three-dimensional image suddenly disappeared. When other people saw him leaving, they immediately lifted their ninjutsu, and gradually disappeared into the air one by one, and this dim space once again returned to its original silence. The country of Linji, which was originally unknown, suddenly became the focus of attention of several forces after becoming a dead place. At the same time, at the border of the country of fire, in a certain forest bordering the country of Tien. Boom! The calm forest suddenly burst out with a burst of pink light. In the next moment, with a huge roar, more than a dozen figures suddenly screamed and flew into the air, followed by a flash of pink cold light, the figure in the air. It instantly turned into a shower of blood, and it fell and sprinkled on the lush trees, dyeing the green leaves completely red, and suddenly filling this small piece of wood with a strong smell of blood. When the two surviving figures fell, they were suddenly grasped by the two big hands transformed into pink light, and slowly fell in front of a beautiful black-haired girl. Damn it, I didn't expect it would. How can it be? Wearing masks, they looked at the black-haired girl with scarlet pupils in disbelief. They were also their target this time, Uchiha Crescent Moon. Zan Yu didn't bother to talk nonsense with the two dying people, but suddenly her eyes condensed, and in the scarlet pupils, the ink-colored twinkling star pattern slowly turned. Feng Yunye. The pupil technique was activated instantly, and the two people caught by Susano suddenly stopped struggling, and the two faces in the mask gradually became sluggish. After a while, the huge Susano arm threw the two aside like throwing trash. The next moment, the pupils of Crescent Moon returned to their original black color, and the pink Susano slowly dissipated, gradually revealing the beauty with a sneer inside. Maiden. So that's it, Shimura Danzo. The girl said something inexplicably, and then jumped forward and ran in a certain direction. After a short while, she completely disappeared in this forest with a thick bloody smell. Chapter 47. Huh, this is really a big project. Aruka exhaled a suffocating breath. It was hard to hide the exhaustion on his face. Using force field control, chaotic space, and force field perception at the same time for a long time, the consumption of chakra does not matter, but the energy consumed by high concentration is too terrifying. Although he had already printed the design of the training ground in his mind last night, even if he had a detailed plan in his mind, the energy spent in actual operation made him almost tired. After all, that is an internal transformation of thousands of square meters. Ms. Aruka, are you okay? Aruka waved his hand and signaled that he was okay, except that he was a little tired, and there was nothing else, and he would be able to recover after a while. Ms. Aruka, what's inside? Little Sakura couldn't help but curiosity and asked Aruka. The training field, as the name implies, is where you will train next. I have set up a total of 20 training projects in it. Each project or team, or single person, can only proceed to the next project after completing one project. When you complete all the projects, it proves that your physical fitness has reached a certain standard. At that time, I will give each of you a special strength. After speaking, Aruka suddenly sat down on the ground and continued. You don't have to ask what power it is, and I won't say if you ask, you only need to complete the training step by step. Aruka's words made Sakura and Ino, who were about to continue to ask questions, had to swallow them back. Hinata was very well behaved and didn't ask anything, and because Sasuke knew in advance, he was only interested in the next training. Then let's go in now. A look of expectation flashed across Sasuke's stern face, but Aruka didn't mean to stand up. It's no different from going in now and looking for death. You have to wait at least half an hour. Why? I have to ask. There is no oxygen in it now. Can you, a normal person, live without oxygen? When Aruka was angry, Sakura and Ino became even more confused and asked subconsciously. Oxygen. What is that? Hearing this, Aruka immediately covered his forehead. After a long time, he said helplessly in the eyes of a few people, air's what you breathe. Okay, don't ask about it anymore. In short, you can't go in now, you have to wait inside. You can only get in when it's fully ventilated. Wait for me until then. At the end of the day, everyone can hear the impatience in his tone, which reminds the little Sakura and Ino that Aruka still bears the name of a violent ghost teacher. If he is offended, the ghost knows what he will do. Things come. Hokage office. Then, I beg you. Third generation shook the pipe beside his mouth and solemnly said to the three Anbus who were kneeling in front of the desk. Yes. The three Anbu wearing masks of various colors responded. The next moment, the three suddenly turned into a cloud of white smoke, and their figures completely disappeared in the cloud of white fog. After they left, Third generation put down the files in their hands, stood up slowly, walked to the window, and looked down through the window sill. The ninjas wearing Konoha vests are trying to maintain order, but the originally neat and orderly buildings around the streets are in a mess at this time. And all this is because of a sudden earthquake. Fortunately, the earthquake was not particularly strong. Some older buildings collapsed, and the losses were not great. The casualties should also be low. After all, although most villagers are just ordinary people, there will always be ninjas living nearby. Now, there is no need to worry about the safety of ordinary villagers. At this time, third generation is not thinking about the loss of the village, but what is going on in this sudden earthquake. If it is a natural phenomenon, it would be nice to say, but third generation always feels that it is not that simple, so he will send Anbu to find the source according to the direction of the wave propagation and investigate the situation clearly. Advertisement. There is always an ominous premonition, I hope it is my illusion. After a long time, an old sigh suddenly sounded in Hokage's office. In fact, it is not only the country of fire that was affected by the earthquake. Starting from the country of neighboring, the country of fire, the country of Taki, the country of field, the country of frost, and the country of thunder have all suffered different degrees of disasters. The country of Linji, which was at the center of the disaster, was immediately extinct, and all humans and animals were not spared from fleas. Except for the country of Linji, the country of frost, the country of Taki, and the country of Taki were the most affected. Almost all the buildings in the village collapsed, and ordinary villagers the casualties were heavy, and with the number of ninjas in their village, there was no way to investigate the cause of the earthquake. Like the third Hokage in the fire country, Hokage also sent a team to investigate the source of the fluctuations. Although the Earth country has almost no loss due to its relatively long distance, Tsuchikage is very interested in the earthquake and sent it. Investigate the troops. There are some forces hidden in the dark that make the same actions as the land, such as Orochimaru, Sasori, go and investigate. In a dim space, a group of figures are extremely vague, only the eyes are particularly obvious, and even the voices are trembling. A pupil with several circular patterns like annual rings, the man with lavender pupils suddenly said. His voice is very special, like a mechanical sound without a trace of emotional fluctuations, it is not like the timbre of a living person's speech at all. Although the two people who were spotted were only three-dimensional images, they could see that one of them had a rickety figure with a long and narrow tail behind, while the other was quite tall, with clearly visible eyes exuding the light of the cold, completely it's not like human eyes. HMPH, we have to act with this stinky snake again. I also feel uncomfortable working with this guy, boss, shouldn't you consider changing me a partner? I agree with this stinky snake. A team of two must be in harmony. Others watched the quarrel between the two coldly. Only the man who started talking stood up and said coldly. This time you two will act together, and we will talk about other things later. After speaking, his three-dimensional image suddenly disappeared. When other people saw him leaving, they immediately lifted their ninjutsu, and gradually disappeared into the air one by one, and this dim space once again returned to its original silence. The country of Linji, which was originally unknown, suddenly became the focus of attention of several forces after becoming a dead place. At the same time, at the border of the country of fire, in a certain forest bordering the country of Tien. Boom. The calm forest suddenly burst out with a burst of pink light. In the next moment, with a huge roar, more than a dozen figures suddenly screamed and flew into the air, followed by a flash of pink cold light, the figure in the air. It instantly turned into a shower of blood, and it fell and sprinkled on the lush trees, dyeing the green leaves completely red, and suddenly filling this small piece of wood with a strong smell of blood. When the two surviving figures fell, they were suddenly grasped by the two big hands transformed into pink light, and slowly fell in front of a beautiful black-haired girl. Damn it, I didn't expect it would. How can it be? Wearing masks, they looked at the black-haired girl with scarlet pupils in disbelief. They were also their target this time, Uchiha Crescent Moon. Zan Yu didn't bother to talk nonsense with the two dying people, but suddenly her eyes condensed, and in the scarlet pupils, the ink-colored twinkling star pattern slowly turned. Feng Yunye. The pupil technique was activated instantly, and the two people caught by Susano suddenly stopped struggling, and the two faces in the mask gradually became sluggish. After a while, the huge Susano arm threw the two aside like throwing trash. The next moment, the pupils of Crescent Moon returned to their original black color, and the pink Susano slowly dissipated, gradually revealing the beauty with a sneer inside. Maiden. So that's it, Shimura Danzo. The girl said something inexplicably, and then jumped forward and ran in a certain direction. After a short while, she completely disappeared in this forest with a thick bloody smell. Chapter 48. Almost. Aruka patted his pants, then picked up the backpack on the side and stood up. Upon seeing this, Sasuke suddenly looked expectantly at the dark corridor not far away. The training ground in the tunnel will be the starting point of his path of strength. Hey, this is about to begin, it's so troublesome. Mr. Aruka, can you wait a little longer? Damn it, although it's embarrassing, but I really can't walk anymore. Me too, if you want to ask why. I'm hungry, but I don't want to eat. 1 Aruka teacher. 2 Aruka teachers. Aruka sighed, then walked to the acrobatic 5, picked up Choji and Shino, and carried them on their shoulders like cargo. Then he freed his fingers and pointed at Naruto, who was already talking nonsense, and said to Hinata. Hinata, you can help Naruto in. Okay. Hinata obediently walked to Naruto and put Naruto's hand on her shoulder with her face flushed red, and let Naruto hang her whole body on her body. The next moment, her face turned redder, and she didn't know if it was too much. It's hard work or some other reason. Sasuke, you helped get Ya and Shikamaru in. Yep. After Sasuke lifted Tooth and Shikamaru, Aruka used his ability to open the backpack, manipulated a candle to float, and then used his ability to light the fire, and then said to everyone, "Okay, you follow me in." With that said, Aruka took the lead in walking in, Sasuke and Hinata hurriedly followed. Sakura and Ino looked at each other as if they were cheering for each other, and then walked in behind Sasuke and Hinata. When I just walked into the tunnel, there was a burst of cold air, which made everyone instinctively tremble. The candle could only illuminate a small space. Through Aruka's solid back, the scene inside was dark in addition to darkness, and the endless darkness was like the same head. It is like a beast that chooses people and eats, and people can't help but feel terrified. Under the candlelight, Aruka still had a relaxed and comfortable face. Choji and Shino, who were carried on his shoulders, lost half their lives because of the cliff-jumping acrobatics just now, and their sensitivity to the surrounding environment was greatly reduced. Instead, they didn't feel afraid, and like them, Shikamaru and Ya are also pacing forward with the support of Sasuke, and Sasuke's face is only looking forward to the unknown training, without the slightest fear. Hinata's face was always red, and there was no fear of harm at all, only the little Sakura and Ino were walking forward with trembling. After walking for less than a minute, Aruka stopped suddenly and said lightly, "Here." After signaling the people behind to stop, Aruka opened the backpack with his power, and then controlled more than 20 candles to fly inward. After the candles were placed in the designated positions, Aruka flew in with 2 lit candles, and light the placed candles one by one. When all the candles were lit, the scene inside finally appeared in front of everyone. In a space of about 500 square meters, 4 rows of 3-meter-high stone pillars stand in the center of the space, and several relatively small horizontal stone pillars protrude from different positions on the surface of the stone pillars. More than half a meter, and the 4 rows of stone pillars are like 2 entrances. The 2 rows of stone hashirama are separated by 1.5 meters, and the 2 entrances are separated by 4 meters. Advertisement. Through the gaps between the horizontal stone pillars, one can vaguely see a black corridor at the end. On both sides of the 4 rows of stone pillars, there are several candlesticks with weird shapes. There are also several inverted candlesticks on the ceiling. I don't know what the structure of the candlestick is. Only 20 candlesticks stunned the 500 square meter space completely, allowing people to clearly see the scene inside. Ms. Aruka, where is it? Aruka did not answer directly, but put Choji and Shino down, walked directly to the front stone pillar, put his hand on a small horizontal stone pillar, and gently pushed. Click, click, click. Following Aruka's movement, the small horizontal stone pillars turned back, and then the small stone pillar that was pushed was like a switch. Each horizontal stone pillar on the surface of the big stone pillar suddenly began to rotate, and the speed gradually increased. The next moment, a stone pillar suddenly turned towards Aruka's waist, and at the upper and lower positions of that stone pillar, there were also 2 stone pillars attacking Aruka's head and legs. Aruka stepped back 2 steps calmly and avoided the stone pillar's attack. After a while, the stone pillar seemed to have lost its goal and gradually calmed down. As you can see, these stone pillars are all specially made by me. As long as you touch them lightly, they will immediately have a chain reaction. The effect is the same as that of several enemies attacking you at the same time. If you can't avoid it in time, it will be very miserable. Oh, by the way, this kind of mechanism started to operate alone, and the more dense it becomes, the more dense it becomes. There will be a chain reaction of more than 2 organs at the same time. In other words, the more the chain reaction is, the stronger the chain reaction becomes, the faster the mechanism will attack. After a pause, Aruka continued, "What you have to do is very simple, that is, go over all the organs and walk into the tunnel leading to the next training." It is said that Sakura and Ino couldn't help but step back at the same time. This level of response training does not involve these 7-year-old children, even adults may not be able to complete it, no wonder they will shrink back. Ms. Aruka, this kind of training, is it too early for us? Sasuke also looked at Aruka hesitantly. To be honest, if all the organs are operated independently, he still has a little chance to complete the training, but the chain of several dozen organs makes the attack speed unimaginable. He could not pass at all. In the eyes of the 3 of them feared or hesitant, Aruka shrugged and said softly. Well, I didn't say let you pass it all at once. It has been completely transformed into a training ground by me. These organs are only the first training and the easiest training. The subsequent training will only be more difficult than this. You only need to pass all the projects before graduation. There is no specific time limit for each project, only the number of people is limited. For example, this first one, except for Sasuke, all other people will train in pairs. Gudong, even Shikamaru and Shino, who had just been relieved, couldn't help swallowing. This is the easiest training. FK, just this so-called simplest training is estimated to be impossible to pass in a few months, right? How long will the next 19 projects take? Is it really possible to complete all projects before graduation? Your physical function will gradually increase with the time you wear the practice ring. Even if you don't do anything, just shaking around all day long can be much stronger than your peers. Therefore, you don't need to do basic exercises, and normal training is better. Your improvement effect is not as good as the practice ring, so if you want to become stronger, at least this level of training will have practical effects. Hearing Aruka's explanation, the hesitation in Sasuke's eyes gradually dissipated and turned into an unshakable firmness. He glanced at the dangerous stone pillar mechanism not far away, and then he did not hesitate to deal with Aruka. Said. Ms. Aruka, I'll try it first. Seeing that Sasuke was the first to stand up, Aruka nodded in relief. He is indeed his most valued student. This courage alone is worthy of praise. As for Naruto, who is as valued as Sasuke, he is still stricken. With Hinata, it is impossible to expect him to take the lead. Chapter 49 Difficulty. New book is on the list, please recommend. Seeking recommendation. Seeking recommendation. Guicho, every book friend can spend a few seconds every day to vote for the little brother, to help the little brother a vote. I thank you all. Sasuke, don't just focus on using brute force, carefully observe the effect of using different forces to attack the mechanism, and think about how much force should be used. If you run wild all the way, no matter how powerful you are, it will be impossible to pass. Aruka reminded Sasuke, who had already walked to the stone pillar of the mechanism. When he heard this, Sasuke was stunned for a while, then turned his head, nodded to Aruka, and signaled that he listened. Taking a deep breath, Sasuke bowed slightly and made preparations like a cheetah hunting. Gudong. Ino and Sakura swallowed and looked nervously at Sasuke's back. The others also stared at Sasuke. You must know that although Aruka demonstrated the operation of the mechanism just now, it did not actually go inside, so the actual effect of the stone pillar mechanism still unknown. Sasuke taking the lead as the real demonstration, they must carefully observe the operation of the stone pillar mechanism. After all, they will face it sooner or later. The difficulties Sasuke encounters will become their experience. With lessons learned, they will not be so at a loss when they face it. Drink. Sasuke let out a soft sigh, and with a sudden force under his feet, his figure quickly crossed the gap between the small stone Hashirama in the first row of stone pillars and entered the mechanism formation. When he just settled down, the small space made him inevitably encounter the stone pillars of the second row of organs, and the organ stone pillars swiftly moved amidst the sound of crack. Sasuke did not hesitate to pass through the gap of the rotating stone pillar again while the mechanism stone pillar was not fully operating. However, this time he did not simply let him pass over the previous mechanism stone pillar. In Sasuke's body just now when they reached the gap between the stone pillars of the second row of organs and the third stone Hashirama, the second row of organs had been fully operational, and two horizontal stone pillars immediately hit Sasuke's head and legs with a clear sound of breaking wind. Fortunately, the rotating speed of the stone pillar, Sasuke can handle it, and saw his feet push hard and jump up high, avoiding the stone pillar that turned towards his legs, and then his body suddenly crossed in midair, with the soles of his feet turning. Coming over to attack the stone pillar on his head, with the strength of the stone pillar's rotation and his own strength, his figure quickly passed the third row of stone pillar organs that hadn't started to operate. However, at this time, his body was accelerated by the second stone pillar mechanism, and he could not control the speed of his body at all. When he noticed this, his foot had inevitably hit the stone pillar of the fourth row mechanism. Oops, Sasuke whispered in secret. This time, instead of just touching the stone pillar mechanism a little bit like before, he slammed into it directly after the increased force of the second stone pillar. The speed of the stone pillar mechanism is definitely not as slow as before. As if confirming Sasuke's thoughts, the fourth row of stone pillar's organs that were touched suddenly started to rotate, and the acceleration of its rotation was at least twice as fast as before. Sasuke was not ready to cross the stone pillar's organs yet, and even his body the shape was not stabilized. Two stone pillars appeared quickly turning towards him. Without even thinking about it, Sasuke quickly lowered his body and dodged the stone pillar that attacked his head, but the next moment he suddenly felt a huge force coming from his waist, and then his body involuntarily turned to the side. Fly away. What? Sasuke screamed, but his scream stopped abruptly the next moment, and saw a stone pillar on the other side suddenly turned and hit Sasuke's chest severely. He was hit twice in a row, and Sasuke suddenly saw him. Black. The body fell straight down. Sasuke. Little Sakura and Ino exclaimed at the same time, and instinctively wanted to rush inside. Upon seeing this, Aruka looked at them with a little surprise. Aruka usually doesn't seem to pay attention to everyone when he gets along with them, but in fact he has been observing everyone's words and deeds from the corner of his eye, otherwise he would not keep Hinata close to Naruto, because of him. It can be seen that Hinata has always been an introverted child. Only when she comes into contact with Naruto will she show her brave side very rarely, although her shy side can't be changed anyway. Advertisement. He could tell from the first gravity field test that Hinata wanted to give up like others, but after sneaking a glance at Naruto, who was clenching his teeth, he immediately chose to persevere, although Aruka always thought she was watching. Naruto's eyes were a bit wrong, but Aruka didn't think too much. As long as it didn't affect their growth, Aruka wouldn't care. Little Sakura and Ino always gave him a normal impression. At the beginning, it was because Sasuke insisted on them. They chose to persist. Before jumping off the cliff, they were the slowest. When they entered the corridor, the two of them shivered. I thought they were too. That's it, they didn't expect that when Sasuke had an accident, their reaction would be so intense. It seems that Sasuke can determine their growth to a certain extent. Thinking of this, Aruka stretched out his hand and put it on the shoulders of the two of them, blocking their movements, and then said lightly. Don't worry, Sasuke will be fine. After all, it's just training anyway. I still have perfect safety measures. The words fell, seeming to echo Aruka's words. The stone pillar mechanism suddenly became quiet, and then a strange mechanical sound suddenly sounded at Sasuke's position. The next moment, 4 straight lines suddenly appeared around his lying position, and the straight lines gradually extended. The straight lines in the 4 directions quickly converged into a square shape, just covering Sasuke's entire body. Click. The stone slab under Sasuke suddenly cracked, and then slowly floated up. When it hovered right above the stone pillar mechanism, he dragged Sasuke's stone slab towards Aruka at a constant speed. After a short while, it fell in front of everyone, and the bottom of the stone slab suddenly sank. There was just enough space to accommodate the stone slabs, and then the stone slabs were embedded in it, and the empty space in the stone pillar mechanism was suddenly filled with raised stone slabs. When the ground was restored to level, the space finally calmed down. Aruka let go of his hands on the shoulders of Sakura and Ino, and the two of them exclaimed and surrounded Sasuke. Sasuke, are you okay? Sasuke, is there anything uncomfortable? Upon seeing this, the men present, including Aruka, couldn't help but twitch their eyes. FK, this handsome guy is popular, and handsome and powerful guys are simply male enemies. Cough. Sasuke suddenly coughed a few times violently, followed by a painful groan, and then put one hand on the ground, struggling to get up, but the next moment his hand was bent, and the body that had just been supported fell again. Sasuke, don't force it, take a good rest. Hug. I'm sorry, Mrs. Aruka, A look of guilt flashed in Sasuke's eyes. He who only rushed to the 4th row felt that he had failed Aruka's expectations, but Aruka waved his hand, interrupting Sasuke's weak speech, and comforted. You have done a good job. The first time you try, you can pass the 3 rows of organs. To be honest, I only expected you to pass the 2 rows of organs. I didn't expect you to make it to the 4th row. For the students who value, with your qualifications, as long as you pay attention to accumulate the experience of each failure in the future, I believe you will be able to pass all the institutions soon. The slightly encouraging words made Sasuke look better. He nodded and then lay down comfortably. He wanted to recover quickly and try again before going back. So, next, Aruka looked at the 2 girls with 2 distinct hair colors, one pink and one yellow, and said maliciously. Are you fully enlightened? Sasuke will be watching your performance here. Chapter 50 Nara Shikamaru. New book is on the list, please recommend. Seeking recommendation. Seeking recommendation. Guicho every book friend can spend a few seconds every day to vote for the little brother, to help the little brother a vote, I thank you all. Dot 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 dot. What should I say? Is it true that I am too impatient? Aruka looked at the little Sakura and Ino, who had completely lost consciousness in front of him, with a black line. Recalling that after the 2 heard what he said, he didn't have to tell him what to pay attention to in a team of 2. They were like fighting. Aruka was speechless for a while when he rushed directly into the stone pillar formation like chicken blood. After thinking for a while, Aruka pointed at the 2 suddenly, then turned his head to the 5 acrobatics behind the cliff and said solemnly. Have you seen it? This is the negative teaching material. Ninjas must remain calm at all times and must not be impulsive. Otherwise, the results will be disastrous. You must take a warning. Hearing that, with the exception of the well-behaved Hinata and Sasuke, who recovered with peace of mind, including Naruto, who had just been relieved, everyone subconsciously flipped Byakugan towards Aruka. Is there such a shameless person in the world? If it were not for Aruka's inexplicable extra words, Sakura and Ino wouldn't have rushed in directly without thinking. They used the highest speed at the beginning. After encountering the stone pillar mechanism, the speed is almost higher than that of the stone pillar that flew Sasuke. Suddenly, even Sasuke can't handle it, there will be ghosts if the 2 of them can escape. So, in the final analysis, it's all Aruka's fault. Even Byakugan, who couldn't hold everyone with his cheeky like Aruka's wall, couldn't help but coughed awkwardly, and then continued. Okay, back to the topic, now I'm going to talk about the points to pay attention to when the 2 of them coordinated to pass through the barriers. You will listen carefully to me, otherwise, don't blame me for not reminding you if you get a spike. Hearing this, although they knew that Aruka was changing the subject, everyone couldn't help but grumble. After all, although the main reason for the tragedy of the small Sakura Ino group was Aruka's redundant words, it is undeniable that the stone pillar formation is really difficult to break through. Even Sasuke can only make it to the 4th row. They think it's not bad that they can make it to the 3rd row. Although there is a numerical advantage for 2 people to work together, it is inevitable to consider the problem of tacit understanding if they cooperate. If the tacit understanding between the 2 is not enough, it is likely to cause counter effects, but it is not as efficient as one person through the barriers. Fortunately, when you are grouping, you basically get acquaintances. Although the tacit understanding is not so good that you can see the intention of the other party with just a glance, it will not cause trouble to the other party. What is needed most now is the hint given by Aruka. NS. The most important tacit understanding of the 2-person team, I don't need to remind you. You should pay attention to it. I won't talk nonsense. What I say next, you must keep in mind. Everyone nodded in unison. What I want to talk about is the nature of the stone pillar mechanism. It has a characteristic, that is, when it attacks you, the part connected to the horizontal stone pillar will stop for a short time because the strength is completely removed. Therefore, if it is true if you can't dodge, you can take it through defense and then wait for an opportunity to break through. Because the stone pillar mechanism will attack at least in two directions at the same time, so if two people cooperate with each other, you can defend it at the least cost. But Mr. Aruka, if you fight hard, you will definitely be injured, and your actions will definitely be affected, right? Shikamaru asked directly. Aruka glanced at him approvingly, then nodded. Advertisement. Yes, this is also a way to train your anti-strike ability, but you'd better not resist it hard, because the more the stone pillars are behind, the greater the strength of the mechanism, and your small body will definitely not be able to hold it, especially you, Naruto. With that said, Aruka glared at Naruto and said solemnly. You have a criminal record. Last time, you did your best to help Hinata block all the attacks, turning good reaction training into anti-strike training, because your relationship has made Hinata score 0. If you dare to give Hinata again this time trouble, don't blame me for kicking you out. Naruto was a little dissatisfied and wanted to refute when Aruka said that he was brave, but when Aruka mentioned Hinata's 0 score, Naruto couldn't say a word. He really couldn't refute it. After all, because of his relationship, although Hinata was not attacked by a kunai when the results were settled, he did not avoid any kunai. The determination of a 0 score is undisputed. After all, it was because of his own opinion that it was harmful. Naruto, it doesn't matter, I don't mind. Seeing Naruto look guilty, Hinata suddenly comforted weakly. However, these words made Naruto even more ashamed. He could only lower his head and replied to Aruka sullenly, I know, I won't be reckless anymore. Seeing that Naruto is not the hardest duck, Aruka secretly relieved. To be honest, although Naruto is one of his most valued students, he has not grown up yet. He is still the tail of a crane. Compared to Sasuke, who is so good that he doesn't need to worry about it. There is a world of difference between them, so the Naruto-Hinata group he is most worried about. If Naruto was playing fools at this level of training, the consequences would be disastrous, so he had to beat him beforehand, lest he play fools and drag others down. After explaining how to get in and out of the training ground, Aruka picked up the backpack and walked out of the corridor. Mr. Aruka, where are you going? You know at a glance. Of course I have to go. Anyway, the precautions have been explained to you. Why am I staying here? If you don't want to become stronger, even if I stay here to supervise, it will be useless, everything is all. Consciously. After speaking, Aruka left without looking back, leaving everyone staring at each other. Ms. Aruka is right, he has paved the way for us. Whether we can become stronger or not is entirely up to us. His presence or absence is irrelevant. Moreover, a strong person like Mr. Aruka cannot always if you encircle us, he must have his own things to do. Let's quickly find a way to pass this training. Shikamaru looked at the direction in which Aruka had disappeared, and said with a deep voice to the people behind him. Hearing this, everyone nodded in agreement, but Sasuke glanced at Shikamaru unexpectedly. He didn't expect this guy who has always been lazy to say such things, when he was on the edge of the cliff just now. It was also the first one besides himself and Naruto to stand up and analyze. Thinking of this, Sasuke's eyes towards Shikamaru couldn't help being slightly less contemptuous, and he really started to pay attention to the birth of this fellow named Nara Shikamaru. What Aruka didn't know was that when he didn't realize it, the third leader among the 9 students he valued had already inadvertently begun to emerge, and there was a faint tendency to rank alongside Sasuke. If Shikamaru knew that what he said unintentionally would attract Sasuke's attention, and he would even gradually make people around him involuntarily agree with him, it would be impossible to kill him to say such a thing.